This podcast of the Equine Forum is brought to you by the University of Louisville Equine Industry Program at the College of Business. It all begins in 15 seconds right after this word from our podcast sponsor.
The University of Louisville Equine Industry Program at the College of Business is now offering a graduate certificate, which can be completed in 15 or 30 weeks and be done as a standalone or used as 20% of your MBA. Classes at both the undergraduate and graduate level are forming now for August.
From the rail to your radio, this is the Horse Racing Radio Network.
It is early voting. Who is isolated here? A late move here from Gilded Age, Grantham, and towards the inside, Unoho. It is early voting. Who was on top right from the start, and early voting wins the Withers, wire to wire.
And here comes Rombauer on the outside. Rombauer with good-looking strides. Javanica, the filly, trying to hang tough, but Rombauer's up alongside. These two to the finish together. Rombauer got there in a perfectly timed ride by Kyle Frey.
Welcome to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires.
And Bluegrass Cat is taking the lead, and he's taking off. He's got a 3-length lead, opening up from Praying for Cash, who ran a huge race today. Strong Contender is third. It is Bluegrass Cat. A romp in the Haskell. He won it by 7.
Bernardini has just inhaled Wandering Boy. Bernardini coming down to the final furlong. Just a hand ride for him today again. And Wandering Boy. And they're coming down to the finish. And once again, with nonchalant brilliance, Bernardini has won.
Now here's Mike Penna.
Good morning once again, everyone. It is post time for the show that launched a network, the Equine Forum, all presented by TwinSpires and all right here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, off and running with you here this morning, right up until 11 a.m. Eastern on Sirius 216, XM 204, affiliates in Lexington, Louisville, and across the country, and streaming worldwide and podcast on our website, horseracingradio.net, or wherever you are accessing your podcasts. Well, you know, one of the major storylines in racing this weekend, and maybe the major storyline, if you were going to rank them, is the return of 2-year-old filly champion Wonder Wheel, who kicks off her 3-year-old campaign in this afternoon's Suncoast Stakes at Tampa Bay Downs. And every year about this time, you start to get a little fired up. You're always fired up for the road to the Kentucky Derby, but at this time of year, the anticipation of seeing whether or not the best 2-year-olds from last season can remain at the top of the leaderboard when they return at 3, it really does captivate all racing fans, and today is certainly no exception with Wonder Wheel. For fans of 2-year-old champion Forte, your day is coming. Just be patient. He's expected to make his 3-year-old debut for Todd Pletcher in Gulfstream's Fountain of Youth on March 4th. Wonder Wheel won 4 of 5 starts during that championship campaign last year, including her ultra-impressive victory in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, in which she stormed home from 11th in the mid-stages of that race to draw off and win by 3. And here's what her trainer, Mark Casse, had to say about that performance when he joined me on the show a few weeks ago.
Her race in the Breeders' Cup was phenomenal. Over the years, I've always said, good horses can win when things go their way. Great horses win when things don't go their way. And to me, she proved she was great that day just because she overcame so much.
Mark Casse is a member of 2 horse racing Hall of Fames here in the U.S. and in Canada. Mark Casse has been around a lot of exceptional racehorses. So when he starts throwing around the word great, I think that's significant. It's not as if this is his first good horse, and he's caught up in the moment here with Wonder Wheel. He's accustomed to playing this game at the highest levels with horses like Tepin, World Approval, War of Will, Got Stormy, Classic Empire. The list goes on and on. So when Mark Casse uses the word great in describing Wonder Wheel, he has my attention. But the question that I'm going to throw out here this morning is this. Is Wonder Wheel the best 3-year-old of any gender racing today? And I'm not talking about the 3-year-old division as a whole. I'm talking about the 3-year-olds we will see in action today across the country. Is Wonder Wheel the best 3-year-old of any gender racing today? That's our poll question. Give you 2 choices on that. Going to make it really simple. You can vote absolutely, or you can say, no way. Basically, you're out of your mind, Baron. What are you thinking? Absolutely or no way. Is Wonder Wheel the best 3-year-old of any gender racing today? Go to @HRN on Twitter, Horse Racing Radio Network on Facebook to weigh in on the poll question. Or if you don't do social media, you know what to do. Email the show, mike@horseracingradio.net, and I'll pass along the results later in the show. And I think to find the answer to that question, I don't know if you need to go much further than the race in which Wonder Wheel is competing this afternoon. That's the Suncoast. She's unquestionably the most accomplished filly in that field. But is she the best filly? With Julia Shining in the lineup, I'm not as inclined to answer yes to that question as I would be if Julia wasn't in that race. Julia Shining hasn't competed at the same level as Wonder Wheel, but she is a Greatest Stakes winner, and that win came in just her 2nd career start, which tells you she's pretty special. That's not easy to do. The other thing that indicates she's special is her pedigree. She is a full sister to Champion Malathon. She also comes into today's race on an almost identical pattern to Todd Pletcher's 3-year-old filly champion from last year, Nest, who won the Demoiselle to wrap up her 2-year-old campaign, just as Julia Shining did, and then came back to win the Suncoast in her 3-year-old debut. And if Mark Casse is going to say that Wonder Wheel is quote-unquote great, as he described it, his words, because she won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies when things didn't go her way, that's exactly the way he described it, couldn't you say the very same thing about Julia Shining? I know it wasn't the same level, it wasn't the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, but Julia Shining hasn't exactly had things her own way in either of her 2 career starts, but yet she's found a way to win both of those when things didn't go her way. The other big advantage Julia Shining may have in today's race is that she's drawn the outside post in the field of 9, while Wonder Wheel is going to have to deal with a rail draw. So my answer to the question I posed this morning is our poll question: is Wonder Wheel the best 3-year-old of any gender racing today? My answer is no, because I'm not even sold she's necessarily the best 3-year-old in her own race this afternoon. Most accomplished, absolutely. Is she the best? I'm not sold. I'm voting no for that question. I want to hear your thoughts, though. Let me know your thoughts. And that doesn't even include the other 3 Kentucky Derby points races for the boys. I'll get to those in just a minute. But at 9 o'clock Eastern, you're going to hear from Wonder Wheel's owner, Jon Green of DJ Stables. I'll pose that question to John. I'll ask him his thoughts. Does he think Wonder Wheel is the best 3-year-old of any gender racing today, anywhere in the United States? Again, that's 9 o'clock Eastern. In terms of the 3 Kentucky Derby points races, you have the Sam F. Davis at Tampa Bay Downs, the Withers at Aqueduct, and the El Camino Real Derby at Golden Gate. Only one of those 3 preps has ever produced a Kentucky Derby winner. And it's likely not the one you're thinking. It's the El Camino Real Derby. And that came courtesy of Charismatic in 1999. Charismatic, by the way, did not win the El Camino Real Derby that year. He finished second behind a horse named Cliquot, who would go on to finish third in the Wood Memorial in his next start, but would miss the Kentucky Derby and a chance at a rematch with Charismatic. With all of that said, if you want to win other major graded stakes outside of the Kentucky Derby, being in these races today is a prudent move, at least historically. Go back to Bluegrass Cat. Bluegrass Cat won the Sam F. Davis in 2006. He turned out to be a pretty darn good racehorse, earned well over $1 million. Any given Saturday, same situation. Came back and won the Sam F. Davis the following year. You had Rule. You had McCracken. You had Classic Causeway. All of those horses went on to win major graded stakes later in the season. Didn't win the Kentucky Derby, but won big, great, and they were major players throughout the entire year. How about the Withers? Just in the 2000s, you had Bernardini in 2006. He was okay, huh? You had a Fleet again in 2010, Alpha in 2012. You've had Revolutionary, you've had Max Player, and you had early voting last year, the Preakness winner. None of those horses won the Kentucky Derby, but they were major players in big races throughout the year. So, running in the Sam F. Davis, the Withers, and the El Camino Real Derby, historically speaking, does not give you the best opportunity to be a Derby winner. I mean, look, it's a Derby prep. You're in the hunt. But if you go back and look through history, horses that run in those races typically, other than Charismatic, don't come back and win the Kentucky Derby. But they do win big races down the road. So don't write those horses off as the calendar gets later into the season here in 2023. All right, here's what's coming up. Full show. I told you about Jon Green at 9 o'clock Eastern. After my first break here at 8:15, just about 5 or 6 minutes from right now, you're going to hear from Brien Bouyea, who is the communications director at the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame. Brien wrote a wonderful story about the late jockey Jimmy Winkfield, who's remembered today at Aqueduct with the Jimmy Winkfield Stakes. Jimmy, one of 5 black jockeys inducted into the Hall of Fame, and his story is remarkable. And Brian's going to tell you the story in just a few minutes. I think you'll really enjoy that. Eddie Woods is going to be with me, longtime consignor, highly successful consignor. He's going to be with me at 8:35 to talk about the fast start that he has had with his graduates here in 2023. 9:20, Matt Dinerman, the announcer at Golden Gate. He'll be with me to talk about the El Camino Real Derby. And at 9:40, Jay Privman remembers Burt Bacharach, who passed away this week at the age of 94. And Jay, longtime Hall of Fame racing rider, has been doing it at a very high level for a very long time and had the chance to cover many of Burt's horses and be around Burt Bacharach in California. So I could think of nobody better to remember Jay Privman, or to remember Burt Bacharach than Jay Privman. So he'll be here at 9:40. 10 o'clock Eastern, it's the TwinSpires Triple Play. James Scully is with me this week for the TwinSpires Triple Play. 10:20, it is Kurt Becker, Stroll Through Racing History. And at 10:30, I ask, they answer, Dale Romans, Tim Wilkin. They will both be here to wrap up the show. A lot of things to get to. It kicks off next with Brien Bouyea talking about Jimmy Winkfield. This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
Race the TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Airdrie Stud is proud to announce the arrival of Grade 1 winning millionaire Happy Saver for the 2023 season. Happy Saver boasts one of the most important female families of the century, as his third dam is Broodmare of the Year Weekend Surprise, dam of the legendary AP Indy. Undefeated in his first 5 starts, Happy Saver capped off his perfect 4-for-4 season with an emphatic victory in the historic Grade 1 Jockey Club Gold Cup.
And Happy Saver stays undefeated. He steps up and he wins the Grade 1 Jockey Club Gold Cup.
Airdrie Studs, Happy Saver. Think about it.
There's plenty of thrills at Gulfstream Park during the championship meet with live racing Wednesday through Sunday. Don't miss the Triple Crown prep races, including the Fountain of Youth Stakes on March 4th and the Florida Derby Saturday, April 1st. Enjoy the races outdoors from the Carousel Club, our Feast in 10 Palms, offering a premium view of the races. For stake schedules, reservations, tickets, and more, head to GulfstreamPark.com.
Adina Stallions set the gold standard, all number 1 in their category. Point of entry, the number 1 stallion by black type and greatest stakes winners standing in Canada.
Oh, the classy point of entry would not be denied.
Shaman Ghost, the number 1 second crop sire standing in Canada.
It's Shaman Ghost, an overwhelming force in the last 16th of a mile.
Signature Red, the #1 stallion by percentage of black type winners standing in Canada.
Signature Red win his second Highlander in a row.
And Silent Name, the #1 stallion by percentage of black type performers standing in Canada. A list that includes Grade 1 winner Silent Poet.
Silent Poet in front. Admiralty Pier out the ground, but Silent Poet has won the Highlander Stakes.
And don't forget Adina's new sire, American Guru. His first crop are now yearlings of 2023. American Guru, the son of Unbridled Song, whose family have already set their gold standards around the world.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
It's wide open here as the field comes for the quarter pole. It's Awesome Gent on the outside, Sudden Surprise in between, Moon Over a Beauty, and there's room there for Quixote's trying to come on through, King Kranz on the far outside, and then Condo King. It is Awesome Gent who has come away with the lead and is drawing off here. It's Awesome Gent by 3 lengths, and Awesome Gent will win the Jimmy Winkfield Stakes. Quixote was second, then King Kranz and Condo King.
Welcome back to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires, this Saturday morning and every Saturday morning here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, with you up until 11 a.m. Eastern. That was John Embriel with the call of the 2016 running of the Jimmy Winkfield Stakes, won by Awesome Gent, who was trained by Todd Pletcher, ridden by Manny Franco that day. That is Todd's only win in the Jimmy Winkfield, and today he is back looking for a second victory in that race, and he will try to do it with Clubhouse, who breaks from the outside post number 5 in that short field. John Velasquez, his main man, is in the irons. Believe it or not, this is one race, the Jimmy Winkfield, that is not on Johnny V's resume. The Hall of Famer has never won it. Maybe today's the day, and he and Todd team up for another big win together with Clubhouse. Jimmy Winkfield, one of 5 black jockeys inducted into the Hall of Fame, and his story is one of the great racing stories that you'll ever hear. And this past week, Brien, who is the communications director for the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame in Saratoga, wrote a beautiful piece about Jimmy Winkfield, telling his entire life story. And I was so captivated by it, I asked Brien to join me on the program, and he is indeed here with us now. Brien, good morning, my friend.
Hey, Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well, and I have to tell you, this story, there were things in this story that I did not know about Jimmy Winkfield. I learned a lot from reading your piece, and his story is just absolutely remarkable.
It really is unique in the history of racing. I mean, this was a guy who came along when there were a lot of black jockeys in the sport, but their numbers were dwindling for a variety of reasons at the time. And he was forced on a journey that nobody has ever seen anything like in the sport. We're talking about a 2-time back-to-back Kentucky Derby winning rider who, a couple of years after winning those races and being among the top jockeys in the country, was basically forced out of the country because of racism, because of a dispute with John Madden, one of the top horsemen of the era, and he was forced to go to Russia and France and ride all throughout Europe and escape Bolsheviks in the Russian Revolution and escape Nazis in Germany. And, just a remarkable story about a guy who he used his skills to become, one of the top riders ever. And a lot of people over here don't know him because most of his career was over in Europe and, bounced around quite a bit, but absolutely a remarkable story.
Yeah, I loved one of the quotes that you included into your piece was you said that he was regarded as a prodigy in the irons when he first burst onto the scene as a young man. And Winkfield was described by noted horseman Colonel Phil Chin as someone who, quote, just sat up there like a piece of gold atop a horse. And, man, what a great quote that is.
Yeah, it's not a quote you hear something like about too often these days, and it really stood out to me. I was researching when Naira asked me to do the piece. We've got a lot of folders in the museum about the people who are in the Hall of Fame, and I've obviously written a little bit about Winkfield before, and but just diving through those files and all the old articles and seeing everything, and Winkfield's kind of lucky because he's one of the guys of that era whose story has been told a little bit. So obviously Naira has the stakes race, but when his legacy was kind of being brought up around the Hall of Fame, Two really top writers wrote biographies about him. The late Ed Hodling wrote a book called Wink, and Joe Drape wrote a book called Black Maestro. And, this was about a century after, nobody had really heard of Winkfield for such a long time. And then his legacy, was able to come back into the spotlight in the early 2000s. So it was great that those guys wrote those books and did exhaustive research, and I highly recommend both of them. But it's great that, Winkfield's story is being able to be told.
You walked through some bullet points of his life and his racing career just a few moments ago, but let's start from the beginning. He was born in Chilesburg, Kentucky in 1880. Take me from there. Walk me through the story of Jimmy Winkfield.
Yeah, sure. So he, Chilesburg was just a few miles outside of Lexington, and obviously this is horse country, and, he grew up in that environment. And one of the things I didn't get to put in the story is, he started out, he got to Chicago, and he got to Hawthorne, and he didn't really have much of an experience on horses or anything. And he got a mount out there, and in his first mount, he caused an accident during the race, and he got grounded for a year. So he had one race, and then he basically was thrown off for a year before he had another opportunity to get back in there. And then his career just kind of built. He had some supporters. People recognized early on that there was some talent there. And by the time he's 22 years old, he's got 2 Kentucky Derby wins, and he was the first guy since Isaac Murphy, another of the great black jockeys, about a decade earlier to win the Derby back to back. And while that's an amazing accomplishment, it's really kind of something that at that time kind of got a little bit overlooked, because the Kentucky Derby then it had kind of rebounded, but it wasn't the race we know today. I think the first year he won it, it was only like the 10th richest purse in America that year. But he won other races that were just as big or bigger. He won the Latonia Derby. He won the Tennessee Derby. So he was a star, and he was definitely somebody who was being recognized for his talent. But that was an era where opportunities came quickly, and then they went quickly. A lot of the black riders at that point were really getting forced out of the sport. There was racism everywhere. Trainers and owners didn't want to ride the black jockeys. And also the white riders. There's a lot of reports of race wars on the tracks where the white riders would gang up and use a lot of really dirty tactics to crowd, to injure, tossing the black riders over the hedges and stuff. So there was a lot of incidents that were really ugly in racing, and the opportunities just weren't there for these guys. And if they wanted to compete, they had to leave the country, which is, a really sad part of the story of American racing.
John E. Madden is one of the more notable names in racing history, and originally Jimmy Winkfield started to develop a relationship with John E. Madden, but things fell apart quickly. What happened with John Madden in that relationship?
Yeah, so Winkfield was scheduled to ride a horse for Madden in the Futurity, which at that time was the richest race in the country. It was a race for 2-year-olds, and the year that Winkfield was supposed to ride for Madden, the purse of this race was around $36,000, which was a huge number at the time. It was 5 or 6 times what the value of the Kentucky Derby was. Winkfield had a verbal agreement to ride for Madden, and as you know, in racing, it's still something you see today. Jockeys can play musical chairs, and they look for the best opportunity. And Winkfield had a guarantee from another trainer that, win, lose, whatever, if you ride my horse, he was going to get paid $3,000, which was a pretty notable sum for the era. So Winkfield kind of reneged on his promise to Madden, and he rode for this other owner. And while he got the $3,000, it didn't work out for him. The race, the horse Winkfield was on finished 6th. The horse Madden had wanted Jimmy on finished 3rd, which, he was upset about this. Madden really wanted Winkfield to ride for him. He took it as a personal insult, and he was a very powerful horseman. He's a Hall of Fame trainer, but he was also influential as a breeder and an owner. And, he knew everybody in the sport, and he talked to as many prominent owners as he could and people. And, he basically told Winkfield, I'm going to ruin you. And in a sense, he did. Maybe not completely ending his career, but from 1903, when this happened, his mounts just dropped tremendously. He just wasn't getting opportunities to make a living, and that was because of, one decision to kind of pull out from riding John Madden's horse. Yeah,
and it drives Jimmy Winkfield to Europe, and he ends up riding at Austria and France and Germany, Italy, Poland, Russia, Spain, and he's having a lot of success over there at that point in his life, proving that everything he did in America, as you put it in the article, was no fluke. Where does he go from there?
Yeah, so, Russia was a big opportunity for him, and he had a lot of success there. And it seemed, he was making over $100,000 a year, it was reported, by 1917, which is remarkable for any jockey in any country at that era. He was riding for, czars and princes and German barons and, kind of the top people throughout Europe. And he was settled in Russia, and he was enjoying life over there. But they had a communist revolution. It led to a civil war. These Bolsheviks were basically, they would go after anybody that they thought was the aristocrat type who had money. And Winkfield described having to make his clothes look tattered and covering himself with dirt in his hands to kind of look like he was a poor person to, kind of avoid, being a target of these people. But when it really started to break out, he left Russia. There was a racing community there that, they were kind of left alone for a while, but they eventually had to go too because the jockey club ran out of money. So they took the horses and they went through Europe looking for safe passage. And he went on this remarkable journey, and he was kind of a vagabond for a while, looking for any place he could ride. And, he eventually settled in France. And he rode until the age of 48. And it was kind of reported that he had won probably about 2,500 races throughout Europe. But he was in France for a long time. He transitioned to being a trainer after his riding career, and he again seemed like he was settled. And then, of course, World War II comes along, and the Nazis are occupying France. So Winkfield at that point returned to the United States.
Wow, just remarkable. Brien Bouyea is the communications director at the National Museum of Racing and Hall of Fame, and as you can tell, quite the historian himself. He's done a lot of research on Jimmy Winkfield, who today is remembered at Aqueduct with the Jimmy Winkfield Stakes, one of 5 black riders inducted into the Hall of Fame, and certainly deserving. His story is remarkable, as Brien is telling you. Brien, he gets back to the United States. What happens then?
Yeah, so he was training in America, and he was having some, I would say, moderate success. He wasn't, he wasn't winning major stakes or anything like that, but he was kind of through the Mid-Atlantic area, had horses in Delaware and Maryland and places like that, and, West Virginia, and kind of a neat thing that I discovered in the research was one of the jockeys that he used a little bit in West Virginia was an apprentice at the time named Bill Hardtack, which I thought was pretty cool.
That's
and
great.
Obviously Bill Hardtack, one of the greatest riders of all time, won 5 Kentucky Derbies. But Winkfield, he had a couple of notable clients. Pete Bostwick was the guy he trained for, but he just wasn't having the success here that he was over in France. And some of the owners he was training for over there were trying to convince him to come back, which he eventually did. So he went back to France. His son was training with him at this time as well, his son Robert. They had about 36 horses in training, and they were having pretty good success. And as he's getting older, Winkfield, he would come back to the United States here and there. And he kind of got rediscovered again a little bit. There was a Sports Illustrated article that came out in 1961, kind of wondering what happened to him. And, he did an extensive interview. There's good records of Winkfield speaking to all these people and kind of telling his story. He was in Louisville for the Derby week that year, and this was kind of some of the racism showing its ugly head again. He was actually being honored at a dinner by a lot of the turf riders, and they wouldn't let him come into the hotel through the front door. And Winkfield was stubborn, and he refused to go around to a side entrance. So eventually, he was escorted through the front door, and he went to the Derby that year that Carryback won. But then he went back to Europe and kind of disappeared again, and he stayed in France, and that's where he passed away. He was 91 years old when he died, and again, he kind of this was 1974, and basically he was kind of forgotten about again until there was a campaign that kind of got started around the turn of the century by family members and journalists to get him recognized. And the National Museum of Racing, the Historic Review Committee, selected Winkfield for Hall of Fame induction. And then the year later, NYRA started renamed the stakes race in Jimmy's honor. And it's great that his legacy, kind of got revived for people to tell these stories about him and the black riders of his era. Since Jimmy got into the Hall of Fame, 2 other black riders from his era have been inducted, and there's still a few out there that are definitely worthy of consideration and that the committee is reviewing. So hopefully there's a couple others that follow into the Hall with Winkfield.
Yeah, and it made me think of some of the current black riders that have had so much success. And you think about what Jackie Robinson did in baseball, breaking the color barrier. I was reading your article, and I'm thinking, man, Jimmy Winkfield, Isaac Murphy, they were the Jackie Robinsons of thoroughbred racing, having to endure all of that hatred and all of that racism and persevere through it and get to the highest levels. And here they are in the Hall of Fame. And it made me think of, guys like Kendrick Carmouche and Sean Bridgmahan and the success that they have had in this sport. And it's because of people like Jimmy Winkfield who helped pave the way early on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the early days of thoroughbred racing, the black riders were out there right alongside the white riders. And, there wasn't a name that pops up like a Jackie Robinson that was this huge name that broke a color barrier, because these guys were there right from the beginning.
Yeah.
They were predominantly, in a lot of the states, they were predominantly the jockeys. I think of the 28 first Kentucky Derby runnings, 15 of them were won by black riders. The first Derby, there were 15 riders in the field, and 13 of them were black. So it's a story that people really should take a look at. It's part of the sport's history. It's part of the country's history. Ed Hodling, who wrote the first book about Winkfield called Wink, prior to that, he wrote a book called The Great Black Jockeys, which is outstanding reading for anybody who really wants to know about this aspect of the sport and about the wonderful horsemen that the black riders were. They also, they trained as well. There are 2 black trainers in the Hall of Fame, Ed Brown and Ansel Williamson, who were remarkable trainers in the 19th century. But like you said, there's not a lot of them out there today, but they are part of a long-standing legacy in the sport.
Well, Brien, this has been fantastic to look back on the life and the racing career of Jimmy Winkfield. And by the way, Isaac Murphy, Willie Sims, Shelby Barnes, and Anthony Hamilton are the other 4 riders, along with Winkfield, the black riders that now have plaques, and deservedly so, in the Horse Racing Hall of Fame in Saratoga. And I hope that when you make a trip there this summer, you get a chance to visit and check it out, because it is really a treat. And Brien, this has been a delight this morning. Thank you so much for taking the time and for remembering Jimmy and telling his story here on the show.
My pleasure. Anytime.
All right. We'll talk again soon. All the best. Brien Bouyea here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. What a story. And what a story of perseverance and the things that he got to experience. Maybe through I'm sure he didn't expect to have to head to Europe and ride in Poland and Russia and all over France and all of those things. But everywhere Jimmy Winkfield went, he was successful. And today, when you watch the Jimmy Winkfield Stakes at Aqueduct, just remember what the race stands for and the man that it stands for. And my thanks to Brien for telling the entire story there. All right, coming up next, you're going to hear from Eddie Woods, longtime consignor. He plays at the highest levels. He has had a really fast start with his runners here in 2023. I'll tell you all about that after your Legends of the Turf and a short commercial break.
On June 9th, 1956, the field went postward for the running of the $50,000 Argonaut Handicap at Hollywood Park. In the field were Langland Farms Porterhouse, who had whipped his chief rival in this field, Swaps, by a head in the previous meeting of the 2 in the Californian. The very speedy Bobby Brocato with the master craftsman Johnny Longden in the irons, and of course Swaps, who would come off an injury as a 3-year-old to make an attempt at a 3rd world record. Swaps had already notched world records for 1 1/16 miles and 1 mile and 70 yards. The Hollywood Park had been especially groomed to be as fast as a 1-arm paper hanger in a 4-room apartment with a 2-hour deadline. The anticipation was high amongst the patrons on this day for the import of a possible record-breaking performance. Trainer Mish Tenney said flatly and openly that his horse, Swaps, would lower Citation's world mark of 1:33 3 for the flat mile, a record that had stood since 1949. As the horses broke from the starting gate, it was expected that the very speedy Bobby Brocato with Longden in the saddle would go to the front to try to steal it. But Bill Shoemaker got Swaps out of the box like a rocket down along the fence, and he was not about to allow himself to get shut off by the speed horses outside of him going into the turn. Swaps established a clear lead going into the clubhouse turn. Shoemaker realized Longden was resigned to playing the waiting game, settling in just off the pace with Bobby Brocato. Schumacher turned that strategy to his own advantage while keeping lots of horse in reserve, setting the early fractions. Swaps had an open lead all the way down the backside while turning in a 22 3/4, 45-1 for the half, and 108-2 for the first 6 panels. As the field swung through the far turn in the glistening California sunlight, Longden made his expected move with Bobby Brocato, and with a quick burst of speed got his mount set up to Shoemaker's boot on the leader. The shoe went to the stick, cracking the flank of Swaps with a hard lick, and Swaps responded to again move clear. The Rex Ellsworth-owned 4-year-old held sway during the run down the lane, and all eyes were now on the teletimer, which flashed 1:33-1 as he hit the wire, a new world record. Bobby Brocato had been beaten by barely a length in a supremely game effort, and Porterhouse, in receipt of 9 pounds from Swaps, was 6 lengths further back in third. Swaps had clocked the last half mile in a most impressive 48 flat. It was a third world record he had chalked up, and he was, in no uncertain terms, to be regarded as one of the all-time greats on the racetrack. He was blessed with class, courage, and a tremendous amount of ability, a surefire recipe for greatness. You know, not all fast horses are great, but all great horses are fast, and Swaps was undeniably fast indeed. Many observers on the scene at Hollywood Park on that June day in 1956 felt Swaps could have gone faster if he had been pushed in the early part of the race, but it was breathtakingly fast as it was. June 9, 1956, at Hollywood Park, in the Argonaut Handicap, the day Swaps set his 3rd world mark.
Race to TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Woodford Feed, where tradition merges with technology. Family owned since 1940 and providing exceptional customer service, Woodford Feed specializes in the highest quality feed, using only the finest ingredients to ensure optimal nutrition for your horses. In addition, Woodford Feed can help with all your farm needs, including field seed, fertilizer, and weed control. So whether your horse is sprinting around the racetrack or has a foal by her side, count on Woodford Feed to provide the quality nutrition necessary to perform at the highest level. Woodford Feed, Versailles, Kentucky.
Sam Houston's live thoroughbred meet runs through April 8th and features a new afternoon racing schedule for 2023 with racing Friday through Sunday and a first post at 1 p.m. Central. The meet is highlighted by the Houston Racing Festival on Saturday, January 28th, Texas Preview Day on February 18th, and Texas Champions Day March 25th. Canadian racing fans are invited to play Sam Houston at simulcast outlets throughout Canada and on HPI Bet. For more information, visit shrp.com.
New to Coolmore America for 2023 is Jack Christopher. A son of top sire Munnings and a 3-time Grade 1 winner, Jack Christopher was an 8 3/4 length winner on debut at Saratoga at 2 before winning the Grade 1 Champagne with a whopping 102 Beyer. His 3-year-old campaign included wins in the Grade 2 Pat Day Mile, the Grade 1 Woody Stevens by 10 lengths, and the Grade 1 H. Allen Jerkins. Jack Christopher stands at an introductory fee of $45,000. Call the team at Ashford today to book your mare before he fills up.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Rocket Can let go in the red colors as they run to the top of the stretch. It's Rocket Can who comes away with the lead. Toward the outside, Shadow Dragon with an upset threat. Cyclone Mischief needs to do better than that. Legacy Isle is next, and they're at the top of the stretch. Rocket Can tries to finish it up. Shadow Dragon takes aim. 16th to go. It's Rocket Can responding on the outside in Shadow Dragon. They come to the finish. It's Bill Mott. It's Junior Alvarado again. It's Rocket Can to win the Holy Bull by a length in the end.
Second, Machado Dragon, who fired a huge shot. He completes the Mod Exacta. Third is West Coast Cowboy in 144-4.
Welcome back to the Equine Forum. Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, with you on this edition of the show, presented as it is every week by TwinSpires. And that was Pete Aiello with the call of last Saturday's Grade 3 Holy Bull Stakes at Gulfstream. Rocket Can for Bill Mott, proving that he is a contender, not a pretender, in this year's run to the Kentucky Derby. And he is one of several Eddie Woods stable graduates to have success early on in 2023. It has been a fast start for the leading consignor, and he is with me now here on HRRN. Eddie, good morning, my friend.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing really well, and I'm sure you're doing really well, too, when you take a look at the horses that are running and winning big races that have come out of your program. Pretty impressive, my friend.
Yeah, we've had a good start, fortunately.
Yeah, great start. Rocket Can, Reincarnate winning the Grade 3 Sham. Newgate, we heard the news about him today. Unfortunately, he is going to be out for a couple of months with a hock issue, but we'll see him again. He wins the Grade 3 Robert B. Lewis, Hopkins in the Grade 3 Palos Verdes, and Newgrange in the Grade 2 San Pasquale. How about that?
Well, that's very good. Nice horses.
Yeah, really nice horses. What do you remember about some of those horses early on? Did you kind of get a sense that these could be stars like this?
They had the potential. You know, they're expensive horses going in, but they're big, good-looking things. They all trained really well. You know, Newgate's a beautiful horse. Reincarnate's a gorgeous-looking horse. They're all quite good-looking, you know, so they all had potential.
Is there something, Eddie, because this isn't new. You and I talk every year, and we get a chance to look back on some of your success, but is there something about the way that you and your team do things that allows you to have this success year in and year out with these horses?
Not really. We just get nice horses, and we try not to mess them up.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's as humble as it's going to get from Eddie Woods. Tell me a little bit more about Newgate. What do you remember about Newgate?
He's stunning looking. He's tall, leggy, just like if you wanted to paint a horse, that's the one you'd paint. He had everything. Big, beautiful head and a beautiful eye. Lovely hip. Just and a great demeanor.
What about Reincarnate?
Reincarnate, he's a tank of a horse. He's a beautiful color. You know, that gray, dappley color. Very good looking and a pretty smooth horse. He went through some changes through the winter, and he just got better looking as we came along.
And Rocket Can?
Rocket Can took a little while to come around. He wasn't just quite such an obvious horse. He had all the right parts, and he eventually, you know, he muscled on out and developed, and he's going to get better and better as he goes along, the older he gets.
When you start thinking and trying to, I won't call it recruit horses, I guess, that you're going to sell, because I'm sure there are a lot of people that now, with the success you've had, simply send horses to you. But when you start looking at horses that you're going to be selling and you start putting the program together every year, what are some of the boxes that you kind of have that you want a horse to check if you think that they're going to sell well and be successful?
They have to have a shape to begin with. You know, they need to look like athletes, look like runners. They need to look like they're probably early. And then a bit of sire power, and then after that, as much pedigree as you can afford.
What's more important, pedigree or sire, or like athletic ability?
Well, at the end of the day, pedigree always comes to the top, whether it be horses or people. But they do need they do need to have an athletic shape.
As we start to get into the 2-year-old sales season, you'll focus on OBS. That March catalog has just come out, so people can go take a look at all the Eddie Woods horses that will be offered there. Give me an update on where we are with this 2-year-old sales scene right now, Eddie.
2-year-old sales scene, you know, we're going to ship in there in 3.5 weeks. Looks like there's 800-odd horses in OBS, bunch of really nice horses, I'm presuming. And if the market holds up like it has so far for the last 2 years, we'll be in good shape.
Yeah, I guess that's a better way to put it. Where do you see the market right now, and where do you see it going early on here in 2023?
We don't need to see it really. We just don't need it to go down. We just need it to hold itself where it's at. And, you know, nice horses were very hard to buy this fall, and hopefully nice horses are very hard to buy this spring.
Yeah. And it's a little bit different what you do, Eddie, with the 2-year-olds. You're looking at them as yearlings and then thinking, okay, let's improve them and get them to the 2-year-old in training sales like this OBS sale in March. A little bit of a different game with the 2-year-olds, isn't it?
From getting the horse ready for a 2-year-old sale to getting the horse ready for going racing, yes.
Yeah.
You just have you got to go a little sooner with them. But, you know, at the same point in time, there's so many good horses come out of 2-year-old sales. It's, you know, they withstand it.
You know, it seems like too, Eddie, I've heard this over the years where people will say, you know, they work so fast and that can't be good for them. But you have to work fast if you want to bring the big money and you want to sell well at those 2-year-old sales. What's your take? I mean, obviously you want them to work quickly, but can you overdo it?
You probably can. It's a case of when not to overdo it. You know, it's like you take Corniche, fabulous fast horse, champion 2-year-old, big solid colt, work quick. Good horses go quick.
Yeah. I can imagine it's a lot like when I talk to a trainer and they'll say, you know, every horse is an individual. Is it like that with 2-year-old consignors too?
Very much so. Some of them are all not meant for 2-year-old sales. Some of them are meant for later sales. And that's why we are cautious about what we try and buy to go to a 2-year-old sale.
Well, I know you have so many good ones coming up in March, so I won't ask you to walk through all of them. But off the top of your head, hit some of the highlights. If people stop by Barn 11 at the OBS sale, they see the Eddie Woods consignment, who are some of the horses you're saying, hey, guys, don't miss these?
Well, we're going to have the Reincarnated. It's a lovely horse, Golden Sense. We got Medaglia Colt, Constitution Filly, Justify Filly. We've got a good group of horses, actually.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it, Eddie, but every year you're here with good horses, and the horses tend to run the following year too. Outside of the March sale, where are you going after that? Where can we look for more Eddie Woods
We go
horses?
to April. We're going to take a bundle to April in OBS, and then we'll go to Timonium in May, right after the Preakness.
How do you know which horses are suited for which sale?
You kind of got to guess early. And you kind of know by the shape and the way they're doing as to when you can go. And you just pick your spots and you know, try and you don't take all your nice horses to the same sale because they compete against one another in the barn, so you spot them around different sales.
Is it possible, Eddie, if a horse for some reason doesn't bring the results you're looking for in, let's say, March, maybe they're still developing a little bit, can you take that horse, if the connections want to, and bring them to Timonium later in the year?
Yeah, some of the time, yes, or else you can go to the June sale in Ocala.
Yeah. Well, it all works, and whatever you're doing, Eddie, keep it rolling because it's been a fast start, and congratulations on that success, and good luck at the upcoming March sale, my friend.
Thank you very much.
All right, Eddie Woods here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. You can go to his website to learn more about all the horses that he's going to be selling and all of his success. That is EddieWoods.com, and always appreciate Eddie making time. This time of the morning for people like Eddie getting horses ready is always so busy, and it's nice for him to spend a few minutes with us here on the show. But one of the questions that I asked him about, you know, what's more important, the pedigree or the athletic ability? And he said, at the end, pedigree always wins out. Pedigree always comes to the top. And you would think it might be the opposite, right? Where you can overlook a horse's pedigree if they have the athletic ability and they look like they're a good mover and they train well and they show well, all of those things. You can maybe overlook the pedigree. But here's a guy in Eddie Woods who's done this for a very long time at a very high level saying, in the end, pedigree always wins out. But he also was quick to point out as much pedigree as you can afford, because the horses with the big pedigrees that also train well and show well and vet well are going to bring a lot of money. EddieWoods.com is the website to go check out more and to see his facility, and he really does one heck of a job down there in Florida. All right, when I come back, it is time for this week's edition of Calling All 3-Year-Olds with Bobby Neuman. That is presented every week by Spendthrift. Then I'll get you ready for the second hour of the program and tell you what's ahead in Hour 3. Hour 2, by the way, at 9 Eastern, begins with Jon Green, who is the owner of champion Wonder Wheel coming back in today's Suncoast Stakes at Tampa Bay Downs. So a lot of things to talk about still. Stay with me. It's the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing Radio Network.
Did you receive a call or message that mentioned Social Security and demanded immediate action? Did the caller know your Social Security number or other personal information and tell you that your Social Security number had been used in connection with the crime? Did you feel worried that your Social Security number might be suspended, your bank account might be frozen or seized, or you could be arrested? That is not the Social Security Administration. Social Security will not threaten you, demand your personal information, or instant payment, email or text you pictures or documents, or use a real government official's name to gain your trust. Social Security does not accept payments by gift card, prepaid debit card, internet currency, or by mailing cash. Criminals use these forms of payment because they are hard to trace. Do not be fooled. Hang up. Ignore them. Report this criminal activity to the Social Security Administration Office of the Inspector General at oig.ssa.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
James Brown and Bill Cowher welcoming you back to Dennis Melvin's house. It's time for the Midnight Snack Run.
This is one tricky obstacle course. Sticking to healthy habits in this kitchen is going to take focus and determination, but it can be done, JB.
He's already entered the snack part of the course, and he's eyeballing a jar of chocolate candy.
That is tempting right off the start.
Uh-oh, he's reaching, Bill, but he pushes it away.
Great stiff arm.
He's approaching a plate of delicious-looking iced cookies.
Oh, Dennis, you only want one of those.
He blows right by him for the apple.
Oh, the fridge. It's make or break time, JB.
He stares down some rich-looking treats. Uh-oh, looks like he's headed for the soda. Wait, he jukes left, grabs the water bottle, and shuts the door with his elbow in record time.
Unbelievable move. I gotta see that again.
And he's out. He even turned off the light.
That's the way you execute a midnight snack run.
Stand Up to Cancer and Rally want you to reduce your risk for cancer.
Go to takeahealthystand.org.
And now an important message from Jerry Rice.
As a career wide receiver, I've been hit hard. But no training nor practice prepared us for the devastation of COVID-19. Thankfully, there is hope. Even with multiple vaccines available, we still have to work together until everyone is safe. We all win when we unite to prevent.
For more information, visit unitetoprevent.org.
Hi, this is jockey Brien Hernandez. For me, there's no bigger thrill than crossing the finish line in front, and nobody captures the excitement of our sport like Horse Racing Radio Network. Each week, HRRN brings you exclusive talk shows, podcasts, and in-depth conversations with the biggest names in racing, jockeys, trainers, owners, and more. Plus, HRRN is committed to helping disabled riders through their support of the PDJF. So climb aboard a winner today by visiting horseracingradio.net.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
They're all in line. And they're off.
Spendthrift Farm presents Calling All 3-Year-Olds with Bobby Neuman.
Only 1 points qualifier last weekend as 3-year-olds were showcased in the Grade 3 Holy Bull at Gulfstream. Bill Mott's Rocket Can, a son of Into Mischief, was mid-pack early while in the clear tracking a modest pace. He swept into action around the far turn and eventually got up to win by almost a length over long-shot Shadow Dragon. Time for the mile and a 16th was 1:44.4, and the winner earned 20 Derby points with the victory. Santa Anita hosted the Grade 3 Robert B. Lewis Stakes. It was just a field of 4, and since they were all trained by Bob Baffert, none were eligible to earn the Derby points. Newgate closed from last in the short field to win by a neck under Frankie Dettori. We'll see where he and his stablemates show up next, and if they're transferred to an unsanctioned trainer by the February 28th deadline to become eligible for both the Kentucky Derby and its qualifying points. 3 points qualifiers today, starting with the rescheduled Grade 3 Withers at Aqueduct. Stakes winners Arctic Arrogance, General Banker, 90% Matty, and Andiamo a Firenze square off in the field of 7 going a mile and an 1/8. Tampa Bay Downs offers up the Grade 3 Sam F. Davis, which is the main prep for the Tampa Bay Derby in 4 weeks. WNL comes off an impressive score in the Grade 2 Remsen and is the logical favorite. But up-and-comers Litigate, Zydeco, Dreaming of Kona, and others make it an interesting handicapping puzzle. Finally, Golden Gate's only major race for 3-year-olds is the El Camino Real Derby.
The winner gets an automatic berth in the 2023 Preakness, and Bob Baffert sends second stringers Gilmore and Nullarbor to face the top local contingent. Next week, we'll preview the Grade 2 Risen Star at Fairgrounds, as well as the Hyacinth at Tokyo Racecourse. I'll be back with this week's top 5 list right after this word from Spendthrift.
Spendthrift Farm introduces new for 2023 Classic winner Mo Donegal. A leading 2-year-old of his class, Mo Donegal won the Grade 2 Remsen Stakes to close out his juvenile campaign before going on to win the Grade 2 Wood Memorial and Grade 1 Belmont Stakes as a 3-year-old, joining Nyquist as Classic winners by Uncle Mo.
And it will be Mo Donegal to win the Test of the Champion, the Belmont Stakes.
Mo Donegal became the first horse this century to capture New York's prestigious Remsen at 2 and Wood Memorial at 3. Mo Donegal, the newest Classic winner, standing at Spendthrift.
This week's top 5 list of Derby contenders looks like this. Number 5, Instant Coffee, looked great winning his last couple starts with an exciting closing kick. Number 4, Giant Mischief, the son of Into Mischief, should improve as the distances increase. He's pointing for the Rebel at Oaklawn on February 25th. Number 3, Cave Rock, looked nervous and uncomfortable prior to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and finished second when clearly not at his best. He's capable of better. Number 2, Forte, the Breeders' Cup champ, is back in training. Next start likely the Fountain of Youth at Gulfstream on March 4th. And number 1, Arabian Night, undefeated Baffert trainee, isn't eligible for Derby points yet, but certainly one of the ones off his impressive first 2 starts. That's your Calling All 3-Year-Old segment presented by Spendthrift, the Breeders' Farm.
And we continue to edge closer to the first Saturday in May. The Kentucky Derby now just 84 days, 8 hours, 49 minutes, and 40 seconds away. That's Saturday, May 6th, beneath the TwinSpires at Churchill Downs. Will any of those horses that Bobby just talked about be in the starting gate? It's conceivable that all of them will. It's conceivable that they may not. We'll find out in 84 days. But there is plenty of things to get to coming up in hour number 2 of the show, including champion Wonder Wheel, who returns today in the Suncoast Stakes. And I threw out the poll question this morning at HRRN on Twitter, Horse Racing Radio Network on Facebook. Keep the responses coming. If you don't do social media, you can respond to this question by emailing the show, mike@horseracingradio.net. Is Wonder Wheel the best 3-year-old of any gender racing today? Gave you 2 choices. Make it really simple. Absolutely or no way? Basically, you're insane, Baron. How do you even ask that question? Well, 85% of you thinking I'm a little nuts right now, because no way is by far the leader in this category. And I guess I can see that, because I made a case early on in the show. If you're just joining us, I made a case early on that Wonder Wheel may not even be the best horse in the race she's competing in this afternoon, with Julia Shining in there. And you can look at Wonder Wheel and say, yeah, okay, 4 for 5 as a 2-year-old. She won the Juvenile Fillies. She's by far the most accomplished runner in that field. But is she the best 3-year-old of any gender running today? And I'm not sold she's going to be best in the Suncoast today. It wouldn't shock me a bit if Julia Shining wins that race, which means Wonder Wheel was not the best. Great day of racing. 3 Derby points races on the docket for today. The Sam F. Davis down at Tampa Bay Downs. You got the El Camino Real out at Golden Gate, and, of course, the Withers up in New York, which was supposed to be run last week and is now rescheduled for this afternoon after the inclement weather in New York last weekend. Jon Green is the owner of DJ Stables. They have had a ton of success in the game, and Wonder Wheel is their latest star. Jon is set to join me in just about 4 minutes here, right after 9 o'clock Eastern. I'll welcome Jon to the program. Matt Dinerman is the announcer in California at Golden Gate, and Matt's going to have the call of the El Camino Real this afternoon. Matt will join me for an interview coming up at 9:20, and at 9:40, Jay Privman will be here to remember the late Burt Bacharach, who passed away this week at the age of 94. And Jay, somebody who's had the chance to be around Burt throughout his career, working in Southern California. And really excited to hear Jay's thoughts on Burt, his impact on the game and his life. Jay was tweeting some different things on social media this week, which I thought were really nice. And excited that he's going to be here at 9:40 to talk about Burt Bacharach and his love of horse racing. At 10 o'clock Eastern, it's the TwinSpires Triple Play. James Scully gives you 3 races you'll want to keep an eye on later today that you can go bet at TwinSpires.com. Kurt Becker takes you on his weekly Stroll Through Racing History, and this week a bit of a unique edition with Valentine's Day coming up here on the 14th. Kurt went ahead and did a Valentine's edition of the Stroll Through Racing History and focused on a horse with absolutely a Valentine-related name. So you'll want to stay tuned for that at 10:20. And at 10:30, I Ask, They Answer with Dale and Tim. We'll talk about so many of the pertinent topics in the sport today. And we're going to play a little game of buy or sell. There have been 7 Derby points races contested so far in 2023. And I'm going to ask them, are you buying or selling the winners of each of those points races? Obviously, we won't talk about Newgate because Newgate, who won the Robert B. Lewis, is off the Derby trail with that hock issue. He's going to need 60 to 90 days. We'll see him later in the season. But I'll ask him about Victory Formation and Lugan Night and Reincarnate and Instant Coffee, Arabian Night, and Rocket Can. Are they buying or selling those horses right now, sitting here on February 11th? That's all part of the final segment, I Ask, They Answer, coming up at 10:30. So a lot to get to. Hour 2 begins with Jon Green from DJ Stables next. I'm back with Hour 2 right after I pause 10 seconds for station identification and your Visit Barbados Racing Update. This is HRRN.
Three Derby points races and 1 Kentucky Oaks prep top this weekend's racing schedule. After being rescheduled from last Saturday, the Grade 3 Withers showcases a field of 7 with New York-bred Arctic Arrogance and the Brad Cox-trained Hit Show expected to be popular among bettors. A full field of 12 will meet the starter in the Grade 3 Sam F. Davis at Tampa Bay Downs, with Remsen winner WNL and Dreaming of Kona topping the wide-open renewal. The El Camino Real Derby is the highlight of Saturday's card at Golden Gate, with Hall of Fame trainer Bob Baffert saddling Gilmore and Null Arbor as he looks to win the race for the 3rd time in 4 years. On the filly front, all eyes will be on champion Wonder Wheel as she faces 8 rivals in the Suncoast Stakes at Tampa Bay Downs. A journey her connections hope will end beneath the TwinSpires in early May. And that's your Visit Barbados Racing Update, brought to you by Barbados Tourism. Learn more at visitbarbados.org.
If you've been waiting to discover that sweet spot where peace of mind meets the time of your life, then it sounds like you've been waiting on Barbados. You've been waiting to experience a meal that makes you book a flight to have it again. You've been waiting for adventure in the sun, from the majesty of horse racing and polo to the thrill of surfing our playful waves. From the moment you set foot on the island, you'll realize Barbados is exactly what you've been waiting for. Visit jetblue.com/Barbados for special vacation packages.
This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires.
Welcome back. Hour 2 of 3, the show just about at the midway point. Happy to have you back with me on this Saturday morning. Mike Penna, Baron of the Backstretch, rolling on after a really busy first hour of the program, and it continues to be busy throughout the next 2 hours. If you missed any portion of the first hour of the show, or any of our shows for that matter, you know what to do. Head back to our website, horseracingradio.net. You can listen to the podcast on our website. You can also listen to the podcast on every major podcast platform. Simply type in Horse Racing Radio Network, and you can listen at your leisure. My conversation with Brien Bouyea was fantastic in the first half of the program, or first hour of the program, looking back on the life and the career of the late Jimmy Winkfield and his impact on the sport historically. It was a remarkable recollection from Brien, and you want to go back and listen to that. And, of course, the conversation with Eddie Woods about the success he has had with his horses on the track here in 2023 and looking ahead to the 2-year-old and training sales coming up this year. All of that was part of Hour 1. Hour 2 begins with Jon Green, who is with DJ Stables, the owners of Champion Wonder Wheel, returning to action, her 3-year-old debut in today's Suncoast Stakes at Tampa Bay Downs. Matt Dinerman will be with me at 9:20 from Golden Gate, and at 9:40, Jay Privman remembering the late Burt Bacharach. That's all ahead here in Hour 2. But let's start with Jon Green, Wonder Wheel. What a day it is at Tampa Bay Downs. Jon, appreciate the conversation, my friend. Thanks for being here.
Oh, my pleasure, Mike. I'm a longtime listener, and I really enjoy the show, and I'm pleased to be on today.
I can't wait to see Wonder Wheel strut her stuff. Her 2-year-old campaign was so good, and Mark Casse actually used the word great to describe her performance and what he thinks of Wonder Wheel when he joined me about a month ago on this show.
And that's high praise, because I don't know if your audience realizes, but when he found out that he was going to induct into the Hall of Fame, he said, "Oh, that's good." So the fact that he said the Wonder Wheel's great, in comparison, really shows, what he feels about this filly.
He said it because he said, "Look, good horses can win when everything goes their way. Great horses win when things do not go their way," and that was certainly the case with Wonder Wheel in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. So let's start there. Go back to that race. What do you remember about that day and that performance?
That really shows, and Mike, before I get into the Breeders' Cup race itself, we've been in the business for 40 years, and we've run in tens of thousands of races, and I can honestly tell you that I can count on maybe one hand, maybe one finger, a race that was more incredible and astonishing and just turned around than the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Filly race. Our instructions to Tyler Gaffalione, where you don't have to be in front, but we'd like for you to be in striking range, maybe 3-4 lengths off it, and try to make a run. And by happenstance, she kind of broke flat-footed. She got shuffled back to the rear of the group, and going into the first turn, I remember standing there next to my parents, and I turned to my father and I said, "We're screwed. There's just no way that we can overcome this." Especially with the kind of horses that were in that race. And Tyler was very patient, and he kept her on the rail and saved ground and had to check her a couple of times. And finally the rail opened up, and he went through it, and then he got checked again and repeated again going up the rail when the hole came. And then when he slingshotted her to the outside at the top of the stretch, when she finally had some clear running room, she just exploded. And I don't remember a race like that, whether it was a graded stake race or a claiming race, where a horse had all that kind of trouble, was absolutely against its own talents as far as running style, and still won, and won by daylight. I mean, she won by 2-3 lengths, and it was just a remarkable ride by Tyler, a great training job by Cassie and his group, and it was a stunner for all of us. Not that she won, but the way she won.
Yeah, he also told me that he did not feel that her win in the Darley Alcibiades prior to that race was her best effort. He didn't think that she fired her best shot that day. She certainly did in the Juvenile Fillies.
Yeah, and that's what you have to really understand about then 2-year-olds. They've only run a handful of times. Most of them have dominated their respective fields, and especially in the early races, and they go to the front and they just keep improving. So to have a horse like Wonder Wheel be able to improve every single race, and her numbers show that she improved every single race, whether you look at the buyers or the sheet numbers or whatever indicator you look at, she's improving every time, and that's what we're looking for her 3-year-old year, is that she continues to develop and improve, and she's going to have to, because there's a lot of good 3-year-old fillies that are out there, and people are shooting for the Oaks and for the Black-Eyed Susan and the Acorn. I mean, those are big races on everyone's radar. And Wonder Wheel, just like all the other 3-year-olds, are going to have to step up their game.
Yeah, horses take major strides from 2 to 3, and these months from, say, November to early February here can be significant, both mentally and physically, for these young horses. What things are you seeing, Jon, from Wonder Wheel that lead you to believe she is moving even more forward than she was as a 2-year-old?
Well, the really nice thing about Wonder Wheel is that she's always developing. And I went down to Cassie's farm about 3 weeks ago and looked at her, and I had to take a double take and actually joked with Mark and said, "Are you sure you're showing me the right filly?" Because she had grown and developed and just gotten bigger. She's starting to fill out her frame. Her mother was a big horse. Wonder Gal was big in stature, and Wonder Wheel now is just a hair under 17 hands. So she also has grown and filled out, and she's a stunner when you look at her. And I think that's one of the big things is that she's growing and developing. We're pleased with her development, and it was just astonishing to see just how much she's grown by having a little bit of time off for those couple of weeks after the Breeders' Cup.
She won 4 of 5 starts last year in that championship season. Her only blemish coming in the Grade 1 Spinaway at Saratoga when she was second. But when you're sitting with Mark and you're, having a cocktail, maybe a cigar, do you ever hit him up with, how the hell did you get this filly beat in the Spinaway?
No. Actually, Mike, it's a good question. It's actually the opposite. Again, we've been fortunate. We've been in the business a long time, and we understand that the resume builders, and not that the Spinaway isn't a resume builder. I mean, hell, it's a Grade 1 at Saratoga, so you want to have that. You'd always like to have that as a win. But we went into the Spinaway, and we said it, within our group and also out loud to the general public. The Spinaway is not the most important race for Wonder Wheel's career. We were hopeful that the Alcibiades and the Breeders' Cup filly juvenile were going to be the big ticket items that we were going for. And Mike, not that we don't want to win today in the Suncoast, but this isn't the most important race of her 3-year-old career. We're really looking at this race today as a stepping stone for the Ashland and then hopefully for the Oaks. And look, we'd be disappointed if she didn't win. I mean, she's even money. There's a good group of fillies in the race, not just Julia Shining, but we can get into the race a little bit further. But today's not the most important race. It's 83 days from now. That's when we want her to be at her best. So I know you put out a great poll question about, is she the best 3-year-old running today, male or female? Yeah. My answer to that is I don't care, because I don't want her to be the best 3-year-old on February 11th. I want her to be the best 3-year-old the first weekend of April and the first weekend of May.
That's a great answer and a great approach, because that's the Super Bowl, right? That's the race that you're pointing for. That's the big game at the end of the campaign, if you will. And I know there's the second half of the season, but at least for the spring campaign, that's what you're shooting for. Just like the 3-year-old boys are pointing for the Kentucky Derby. You selected her at the Keeneland September sale as a yearling, and she sold for $275,000. That is certainly not the biggest price tag we've ever seen, but it's not cheap either. What was it about her as a yearling that stood out to you?
We had our shortlisters, Kim Valerio and her team, look at literally every single yearling in Book 1, Book 2, and Book 3. And Wonder Wheel was a Book 1 athlete. She was hip 600 at the Keeneland sale that year. And she made all of the inspection lists. We vetted her out, even though, Mike, we really thought she was going to bring $400,000-$500,000 because of her pedigree and because of the way she looks. So we vetted her out, but we did it really just kind of for our own due diligence, because we said we'd rather spend a couple $100 and know what's going on with the x-rays and the scope than as opposed to wondering if she doesn't bring what we think she's going to bring, should we bid? Because we always want to have the veterinary answers, kind of at our fingertips before we go ahead and invest money. And we were convinced that because of the way she looked and because of the great aggressive walk that she has, that she was going to bring a lot of money. We watched the horse sell. Kim Valerio actually positioned herself right next to the breeder because she knew the breeder. And we knew what the reserve was. And when she failed to breach her reserve of $300,000, I immediately got on the phone with Kim and said, find out what they would like for the horse. And literally within about 2 minutes, after that phone call, we had agreed on an amount, and they walked over to the office at Keeneland, and the horse was ours. And it was all in a whirlwind, but it was in a whirlwind because we kind of made our own luck. We vetted the horse out. We looked at a bunch of horses that day, and Kim positioned herself, next to people that she knew, which was the breeders, so that way we could strike just in case the horse didn't sell. So, we got a little lucky in the sense that she kind of fell in our lap, but it was because of all the hard work and due diligence that we put in that made that luck, we believe.
talking with Jon Green, DJ Stables, the owners of Wonder Wheel, the champion coming back, making her 3-year-old debut in the Suncoast Stakes at Tampa Bay Downs later this afternoon. Jon, you mentioned your family being involved in the sport for 4 decades now. This is not the first 2-year-old filly champion that you've had the chance to be involved with. You also campaigned in partnership with Chuck Zachney, Jaywalk, who was the champion in 2018. Any different this time around when you were sitting there and you heard Wonder Wheel's name called as opposed to Jaywalk?
Yeah, I mean, each time is a wonderful blessing, and we feel very fortunate that we're able to campaign these nice horses the way we do. I think for Jaywalk, it was such a whirlwind, and we really didn't expect and didn't know what to expect when we were campaigning her. And it's a real credit to John Service and his team for getting, Jaywalk to win the Frizette and then ultimately, go from 1 turn to 2 turns and win the Breeders' Cup. So when we won that one, we were kind of, new to that stage. And it was all unique, and we were very excited. This one for Wonder Wheel, we look back in history, and I think it was like 90-something% of the juvenile fillies that win the Eclipse won the Breeders' Cup. So we were very confident that we were going to hear our name. So we could really sit back and enjoy it a lot more. I got a chance to be there for the whole, for a couple of days with my parents, with my wife, with friends. And it wasn't a matter of, okay, do we think we're going to win? It was more of a matter of, hey, we can really sit back and enjoy this because we've been through this before. We kind of know what to expect. And really it meant more to me personally because of that fact, because it was just a matter of being able to enjoy it and take it all in as opposed to wondering if we were going to be fortunate enough to win.
Yeah, it's wonderful to get to this point, too. And as you said, 40 years in the making. And it's not like you haven't been playing at the high level for a while, but it's wonderful to see this all come together with Wonder Wheel this year, Jon. Take me back to the beginning for a couple of minutes and just walk through the family history. Where did the story begin and what led you to this point?
I mean, the short story of it is that a neighbor of ours had a horse. We live close to Monmouth Park, and a neighbor of ours had a horse running and invited us to go to Monmouth Park when I was preteen. And of course, we went to the Monmouth Park and had a hot dog and a drink, and my dad, bet $5 to win on the horse for me, and the horse won, of course. And that was it. That was, that's when we got the bug. And, my dad is a very, very famous and skilled tax expert. So he spent the whole summer going through all the tax code of all the advantages and differences between investing in thoroughbred racing and the other sports, and really found that there was tremendous tax advantages to being involved. So the first, decade or so of being in the horse business, we kind of kept those secrets to ourselves, and we learned about the game and learned about the people and learned about, how to run an operation. And then once we felt comfortable that we knew what we were doing, then we started to offer those tax, services to the general public. And I think my dad was telling me the other day they have over 800 clients that are in the thoroughbred industry. So
wow.
They're dominant in that field. So, the Green Group, his accounting firm, has evolved over the years, just as DJ Stable has evolved over the years. We went from a claiming outfit to trying to breed regional horses to take advantage of the regional monies, restricted, races and everything. And then, maybe about within the past decade or so, we've really stepped up our game as far as buying a little bit more expensive horses and trying to campaign those horses. Eddie Woods, who was a previous caller on our previous guest on your show, was talking about you need to have an athlete, but they need to have a pedigree, and I'm a big believer in that also. I mean, Jaywalk was kind of an anomaly in the sense that I think even though she's Cross Traffic's only Grade 1 winner, but she was such a tremendous athlete and had some good female page that we were willing to take a shot on her. For the most part now, we're trying to buy the Curlins and the Into Mischiefs and the Uncle Mo's and the horses that have 2-turn ability. So if we are fortunate enough to win a big race, exponentially they're worth so much more.
What are some of the things on your bucket list that you'd like to accomplish? Certainly this year, I know the Kentucky Oaks is probably number one, but going forward, what are some of the other goals that you set for DJ Stable?
Well, really, the most important goal was being a guest on your show. So now that I've achieved that, it's like, everything else kind of pales in comparison.
Yeah, it was that or the Hall of Fame, right? So I know.
Right, yeah, exactly, right. Hopefully someday. Wonder Wheel is the kind of filly that you can't take for granted. You really want to take each race in, and that unto itself is a bucket list. I mean, we've run in the Oaks, we've won the Ashland, we've run in the Kentucky Derby, and all those things are really great. But I think that anyone who owns and trains a horse in the industry will tell you that you have to appreciate the successes as they come, because again, these athletes are so fragile. You don't know, if you're gonna we used to sit back and say, hey, we have a nice horse, let's work backwards 6 months and campaign for a certain race, and you can't do that. That's not that's not the realistic play in this industry. I even hesitate to talk about we're hoping that she's going to be great 83 days from now, because 83 days is an eternity when you have a racehorse. So, I think you have to appreciate it. You talk about a bucket list. I would love to be able to win the Oaks, for my parents, more so even than for me. I would love to see Wonder Wheel continue to improve and succeed, and dare I say, hopefully get into the Hall of Fame, because even though we've had all these horses over a 40-year career in the industry, I'm knocking wood when I say this, but I've never even thought about a horse that would be good enough to get into the Hall of Fame. And Wonder Wheel's building that kind of a resume. I don't know if she's that kind of a filly, because they're few and far between, but she's certainly putting together enough of a resume where I think that if she duplicates what she did as a 2-year-old, as a 3-year-old, I think there's going to be some talk about, her being possibly enshrined in a place like that. And Mike, we've never even uttered those words before for any of the horses that we've had.
Yeah. Boy, wouldn't that be remarkable? Jon Green with me here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. John, I've got to get to a break here in just a minute, but before I do, I'll wish you good luck with Wonder Wheel, and I'll leave you with one quick story. When you said tongue-in-cheek, being on your radio show was kind of one of the boxes that I wanted to check most. I remembered growing up in Western Massachusetts, and I wanted to be a track announcer, and the guy that I wanted to be was Tom Durkin, because we would obviously follow New York racing, and I would get all of his calls, and I think Tom was, absolutely brilliant. And I remember meeting him for the first time, and I told him that, and I said, Tom, I really want to be a track announcer. Do you have any advice? I said, you were my idol growing up. And he looked at me and he said, well, Michael, I suggest that you set that bar a little higher. And so that popped into my head when you said that this was your box you wanted to check. So set the bar higher, go for the Hall of Fame, go for the Eclipse Awards, and keep it rolling, John, because it's been quite a ride, and I know it's going to continue. Good luck today.
Well, I appreciate it, Mike. And again, I hope that we'll be talking as we get closer to some of these other big races over the spring and summer. Thank you again for having me on.
Yeah, we certainly will. Jon Green, DJ Stables here on HRRN. When I come back, Matt Dinerman joins me from California. We'll get a chance to talk about the El Camino Real Derby. Then Jay Privman, remembering Burt Bacharach, right around 9:40. This is the Equine Forum presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
Race to TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
The National HBPA's annual conference is fast approaching, March 6th through the 10th at the Hotel Monteleone in New Orleans' historic French Quarter. Don't miss your chance to attend informative panels hosted by industry experts and a keynote address from Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landry. The conference kicks off with a reception on Monday, March 6th, and offers 3 days of panel discussions, presentations, and meetings along with Jeff Landry's keynote speech on Tuesday, March 7th. Attendees will also enjoy an outing at the fairgrounds for racing on Thursday, March 9th. For more information and registration, visit nationalhbpa.com/convention.
Racing fans, Santa Anita's Classic Meet is underway. First post time for a 10-race card on Saturday is at 12:30. And please note, we'll have special early first post time on Big Game Sunday at 11 a.m. with free admission, parking, drink specials, and Serona Sports Bar, and much more. So whether you like the Chiefs or the Eagles, get your Big Game Sunday started with us here at Spectacular Santa Anita. On Saturday, our feature race is the $100,000 Sweet Life Stakes for 3-year-old fillies at 6.5 furlongs down the Hillside Turf Course. And attention all players, you can compete on site to win entries into the 2023 or 2024 NHC this Saturday in our $1,500 NHC Super Qualifier. Fans, don't miss the first Coast to Coast Pick 5 each weekend. It's a $1 minimum bet with a player-friendly 15% takeout covering 5 races from Santa Anita and Gulfstream Park. Just east of Pasadena in Arcadia, Santa Anita. It's the great race place.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
And here comes Tamarando, let loose on the outside. After 3/16's pole, Dance with Fate has the lead over Enterprising, a length away to Tamarando. And Infosec on the inside is fourth. It's Dance with Fate, the leader. Tamarando grinding after him. Dance with Fate confronted by Tamarando. The Calbred Tamarando puts his head in front and wins the El Camino Real Derby over Dance with Fate, Enterprising. Fourth's either Infosec or Puppy Manners. They were followed by Icy Ride, Clearaval, Wrap It Up, and Craftsman.
Michael Ronan with the call, the 2014 running of the El Camino Real Derby going to Tamarando under Russell Bays with fellow Hall of Famer Jerry Hollendorfer, the trainer. Those two, Russell Bays and Jerry Hollendorfer, have had such an impact on racing in Northern California, and in particular this race, the El Camino Real Derby, which will be renewed later this afternoon. Russell winning the race 9 times, Jerry 6, and that was the final time that they teamed up to do it in 2014. So a special one there, and it is going to be a big day in the Golden State later this afternoon. And the voice of Golden Gate Fields is Matt Dinerman. He is with me now here on the Horse Racing Radio Network to talk about this year's race and what you can expect on this Saturday afternoon in Northern California. Matt, appreciate the conversation.
Happy to be on, Mike. Thanks for having me. And this is a good segue into this race, Mike, that race call and that race, because the morning line favorite, I don't think he's going to be the post-time favorite, but he will get bet. The morning line favorite in this race at 2-1, Passerando, a son of none other than Tamarando.
Yeah, perfect. You know what? I didn't even pick up on that. So in all the research I did, I missed that one. So that's why I'm so glad that you're joining me, because we'll team up to throw some stats out there. I'll give you another one that you're probably well aware of, and I've mentioned this throughout the show this morning. The El Camino Real, of the 3 points races being contested today, the Withers, the Sam F. Davis, and the El Camino Real, the El Camino is the only prep race to have produced a Kentucky Derby winner among those 3. And a lot of people might not realize that and may not have expected that.
It's one of these races, of course, you get that California influence, right? We've seen a lot of very nice 3-year-olds come out of California, a lot of sort of up-and-comers, and we'll talk about it later today, of course, in this show. But a lot of up-and-comers that are sort of going in the right direction there. They use this as a stepping stone, and sometimes you get horses in here that really want the mile and an eighth, so the trainers give it a shot. Other times they know a horse is peaking, but maybe isn't quite ready to face the best in Southern California. So you get a lot of sneaky good horses that come out of this race.
Yeah, you really do. I go back to remembering Event of the Year and his impressive win in the El Camino Real, and then the buzz that he created throughout his career. I was a huge Golden Eagle Racing fan at that time, and I got a chance to meet the Maybes and spend time with them when I was working at Thoroughbred Times, and I traveled to the West Coast. I remember visiting the farm, and Event of the Year was one of those horses that just drew me in to their operation early on.
And I still hear stories about Event of the Year and how talented he was. I mean, and we've seen horses like him. Tabasco Cat comes out of the El Camino Real Derby. He ran this race. Of course, he went on to win the Preakness and the Belmont. Real Quiet ran in this race. And even Rombauer, of course, the Preakness winner a couple years ago, he used that free Preakness berth that we give out in this race to win the Preakness.
Yeah, I go back to the 80s, too, when you had Tanks Prospect and Snow Chief. I mean, the El Camino Real, I don't think gets the respect of some of the other prep races, but as I mentioned, the only of the three being run today to have produced a Derby winner, and that was Charismatic in 1999, who did not win the El Camino Real. He was second, but he's a horse that shined on our sport's biggest stage, and he started, or at least came through the El Camino Real on his way to getting the roses that year. Matt, let's talk about this year's renewal. A very competitive group, and I'll let you start anywhere you want to with the storylines. I'm sure there are several.
Yes, there are plenty of storylines this year, and you know what? This race, rich in history, as you mentioned, it's a very prestigious race. Up here in the Bay Area, we're very proud of this race, and we're really excited to have it for everybody every single year. And looking at this year, of course, I guess we should start with Bob Baffert. He's sort of the theme of the 3-year-old division out west, and he's got, I think, the horse to beat in there, Gilmore. I think going to be the post-time favorite. He's 4-1 on the morning line. I can't possibly see anybody getting anything close to that. And he's the one to beat. I think he's going to Love 'em Island in 8th. Here he draws the rail. He gets Jose Valdivia, so a Southern California jockey's going to come up here and ride him. And I think really when we look at this race, Mike, the question is, as handicappers, as analysts, the race goes through him. Is there anybody that can beat Gilmore? And that's what I look for handicapping this race. That's the question.
Yeah, Gilmore going to have to break from that inside post. And as you said, Bob Baffert just seems to be holding all the cards in whether it's Northern or Southern California. If you are going to try and beat Gilmore, who are some of the other main players in this spot?
I like a couple of locals in this race. I really like Chase the Chaos. I think he's a horse that's rapidly improving. He's thrived on this Tapeta surface. He ran a hole in the wind last time out in an allowance race over this track, and he won by about 7, and he was geared down. His win sort of reminded me of the prep race that Another Twist of Fate ran when he won a few years ago. Just a big, nice, long-striding, good-looking horse. He keeps improving, and I think he's got a real shot to maybe surprise, so to speak. I don't think it's going to be a huge surprise, but basically pull off a mild upset over Gilmore. And anybody who beats Gilmore, I suppose you could say, would be a mild upset. Also, Passerando, we talked about him earlier. He's a horse that I think, again, another one that's going to Love 'em Island in 8th. He's a hard-knocking horse. He's not one with a huge burst of speed. We saw him have a little burst of speed when he won the Gold Rush Stakes here last year in the fall, but he got a really fast pace to chase that day, and I think that sort of made it look like he had a huge turn of foot. I think this horse is more of a grinding sort, but he likes this track. Trainer Steve Speck, he's a phenomenal horseman, and he's got this horse ready to go. So I think those are your two local horses that, in my opinion, have the best shot to beat Gilmore, and Noah Arbor, who's the other Baffert in this race, expected to show speed.
What do you make of Harson, who has had 2 starts, both at Golden Gate, both sprinting, now stretches out, son of Golden Sense? Both of those starts, both victories and impressive victories. You had the chance to call them. What do you think of Harson?
Harson, very much, it appears for the analysts, us racing analysts, very much appears as the wild card, sort of the wise guy horse in this race. He's been a very well-regarded horse. I mean, before he ran his first race, there was a lot of backstretch buzz about this horse. He was working quickly in the mornings. He was doing it the right way. And so far, he's done nothing wrong, and he's never not been on the lead. I think the real question with him is simply the seasoning. He's only sprinted 2 times. I think that going from 6 furlongs to a mile and an eighth, it's a lot more difficult, especially for a younger horse, than going from 6 furlongs to a mile. And I also spoke to trainer Steve Sherman in the barn area the other day, and he relayed to me, you know what? He's a Kentucky bred. There aren't second-level allowance races up here for 3-year-olds. They're all for 4-year-olds and upward right now. There isn't a stakes race for a horse like him up here until the California Derby in April. So this is sort of our spot. We really don't have a choice but to give it a shot. He says, I wish the race was at a mile. I think that would be probably a little bit easier for him to handle, but we're going to give him a shot, and we do think he's a very nice horse. So I think he's a very good horse, too. I think that down the road, this horse is going to be one of our better 3-year-olds up here, and he probably already is. But the question is, how is he going to be able to go from 6 furlongs to a mile and an eighth and beat some really nice proven routers in this race? I don't think it's going to be easy, but I think the talent is there for him to be competitive against a field like this. The talent's there. I think he's behind the 8-ball seasoning-wise.
Talking with the voice of Golden Gate, Matt Dinerman, here on the Horse Racing Radio Network, previewing this afternoon's El Camino Real Derby. Matt, you get the opportunity to see this scenario play out throughout the entire year, not just in big races like this. And the scenario I'm talking about is you get horses coming from what is determined to be a bigger, more prominent circuit in Southern California, whether it be Santa Anita, Del Mar, and those horses come to Golden Gate. The surface is different because of the Tapeta surface at Golden Gate. That's what the Baffert horses are doing today. So is there an advantage to having experience over that surface, and do you see it play out where horses that come up from Southern California sometimes don't run their best race over that particular surface?
That's a good question. I could possibly be in the minority when I answer this question. I personally have seen too many horses come up here and do just totally fine on the Tapeta. I think it's all a case-by-case basis. I think there are plenty of instances where class can prevail. You get horses that are just a little bit classier that come up here down south, and they win. They take to the Tapeta. We've seen a couple of instances where horses come up here and they really just don't thrive on it for whatever reason. They don't care for it, and they don't run well over it. So I can't say that there's an advantage in every single race. I can't say there's a disadvantage in every single race. But what I can say is I think it's a case-by-case basis. And I also believe that usually you're probably going to see 80% of the time a horse that comes from Southern California, if they're good enough, they run pretty well over this Tapeta surface. And if they lose, I don't always believe that it's, well, they didn't like the synthetic surface necessarily. So I definitely think it's a little bit hard to gauge, and you sort of just have to take it as sort of a case-by-case basis.
Let me ask you another question about Gilmore since we began talking about him. A mile and an eighth on that all-weather surface, big concern with the rail or no big deal?
I think that there could be a little bit of a concern simply because I think there's definitely going to be some race riding involved. We know with these types of races sometimes the field can pack up at some points in the race. That's how synthetic racing is. It's a lot like turf. So I think Jose Valdivia is going to have to work out a good trip from the inside. We've got good riders up here. I think they all know that Gilmore is the horse to beat in the race, and if he gets pinned inside, they're probably going to try to keep him in there and try to get the jump on this horse. So that would be my only concern, but we know he's going to save ground. I think with post positions in a field of 8, it's not a huge deal simply because they're going to have a good run to the first turn. So even if you're drawing post 8, it's not much of a concern. I don't think you got plenty of time to get over if you need to. I think that's really the only concern I have with Gilmore is if maybe he gets boxed in on the inside. But other than that, if he can work out a trip, he's going to save ground. And that's a positive. And that's also a big-time positive because here at Golden Gate, like I said, the race is run like the turf, and you do want to save ground on this track. If you go too wide, that's the difference between a win and a loss, especially on a track like this that's very trip-dependent.
Yeah, well, the El Camino Real comes up as race 8 on the program this afternoon at Golden Gate Fields. Post time is 4:54 Pacific. That's 7:54 here on the East Coast, and you want to make sure that you get your bets in and listen to Matt's analysis, and hopefully he gives you a winner or two on that program. Of course, they'll be able to tune in to you on the television feed too, Matt, I assume?
You will be able to tune in, yes. Every day I'm on there on the track feed giving out analysis right after the post parade, and we will also have a special guest on the track feed as well, Millie Ball from XBTV in Santa Anita. She'll be up here for the day, and we'll be going back and forth for each race. So it's going to be a good telecast. We've got some good elements, some workouts on there for everybody, and it'll be a fun day today.
Yeah, I love Millie. She's fantastic. Matt, listen, really appreciate the visit here this morning. Enjoy the day. We can't wait to hear your call later, and just have a wonderful time on El Camino Real Derby Day.
I appreciate you having me on, Mike. Thanks so much, and enjoy the race.
All right, Matt Dinerman here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. When I come back, I welcome Jay Privman to look back on the life and the contributions to horse racing made by the late Burt Bacharach. That's next. This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
Race the TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Sam Houston's live thoroughbred meet runs through April 8th and features a new afternoon racing schedule for 2023 with racing Friday through Sunday and a first post at 1 p.m. Central. The meet is highlighted by the Houston Racing Festival on Saturday, January 28th, Texas Preview Day on February 18th, and Texas Champions Day March 25th. Canadian racing fans are invited to play Sam Houston at simulcast outlets throughout Canada and on HPI Bet. For more information, visit shrp.com.
I'm here with Joe Brown Nicholson of Nicholson Insurance Agency. Joe, how do you value a horse for insurance?
Well, Mike, it's easy to value a horse when purchased out of a public auction. The insured value would simply be the auction price. But insuring homebreds can be a little more involved.
How so?
Well, factors such as a stud fee, conformation, pedigree, sales and race records of siblings, even popularity of the stallion all come into play.
How closely do you work with owners in determining a horse's value?
Well, the owner has a pretty good idea of the horse's value, so generally it's just a matter of agreeing to the request and having the policy issued.
For all your equine and general insurance needs, including farm owners, liability, homeowners, auto, and more, contact Joe Brown Nicholson at nicholsoninsurance.com or call 859-224-7080. That's 859-224-7080. Nicholson Insurance Agency.
There's plenty of thrills at Gulfstream Park during the championship meet with live racing Wednesday through Sunday. Don't miss the Triple Crown prep races, including the Fountain of Youth Stakes on March 4th and the Florida Derby, Saturday, April 1st. Enjoy the races outdoors from the Carousel Club, our Feast in 10 Palms, offering a premium view of the races. For stake schedules, reservations, tickets, and more, head to GulfstreamPark.com.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN. Presented by TwinSpires.
Less than 3/8 of a mile to the finish, and now Afternoon Delights moving up strongly on the outside. He's a length in front and beginning to widen. HHF down along the inside. The Exeter man chasing Afternoon Delights, and Thunder Gulch in fourth, about 7 lengths off the lead. But here is a superstar in the making. His name is Afternoon Delights. And take a look at this horse. He's 6 lengths in front. Afternoon Delights is moving along powerfully. Thunder Gulch is now out after him on the outside. HHF's dropping back. But here is a superstar headed to the Kentucky Derby next year. That horse's name is Afternoon Delights. And Kent DeSormo and Afternoon Delights absolutely galloping in the Hollywood Futurity. 7 lengths in front. Thunder Gulch in second. HHF third. The Exeter man and Nice Fred.
Afternoon Delights, one of several top runners campaigned by the late Burt Bacharach, who passed away at the age of 94 this week, and he is going to be missed in racing circles and in life in general. He was a wonderful person. I never did have the opportunity to meet Burt, and I attempted a couple of years ago to reach out and try to coordinate an interview with him. It didn't happen through no fault of his own. It just didn't occur, and it is one of the great voids in my broadcasting career that I did not have the opportunity to sit down and talk horse racing with Burt Bacharach. Burt Bacharach and Alan Jerkins, the two that really stand out to me as missed opportunities. And somebody who did have a chance to spend time with him is Jay Privman, Hall of Fame turf rider, longtime writer for the Daily Racing Forum. He's done a lot in this sport, and he's done it at a very high level. And Jay is with me now to remember Burt Bacharach. Jay, appreciate the conversation, my friend. Thanks for being here.
No, thanks for having me on and paying tribute to Burt. I appreciate it.
You sent out some beautiful tweets and remembrances over the past couple of days, and you retweeted a lot of the things that were being said about Burt. When you hear the name Burt Bacharach, what are some of the things that immediately come to mind?
Well, from a racing standpoint, I mean, he absolutely loved racing. As you mentioned, he just played that clip of Afternoon Delights, but he had other top horses like Soul of the Matter, who finished second to Cigar in the first Dubai World Cup. He had Heartlight number 1, who was an Eclipse Award winning filly back in the early 1980s. And Burt himself won an Eclipse Award for television achievement in the early days of the Eclipse Awards. But the thing that I remember most about him is just what an approachable person he was for someone as iconic as he was. I mean, you could go up and talk to him at the track about racing, and he was just wanted to be one of the guys and talk about racing. He was an extremely approachable person. And, he did a lot for the sport. He had a home in Del Mar, so he was at Del Mar quite frequently. And did you might remember a fundraiser a few years ago, not long after the terrible fire at San Luis Rey Downs. He and Elvis Costello put on a fundraiser at a local club, the Belly Up near Del Mar, and raised a lot of money for the victims of that horrible fire. And every year, Burt, until the last year or so, was able to come to the dinner that we put on for the Gregson Foundation, fundraiser for them. He was always very supportive of that. So he was just a very supportive person of racing, but in general, a very friendly person.
Yeah, I think that's the recurring theme that I continued to pick up on as I was reading through some of the things that were written about Burt over the past couple of days. And everybody, to a person, almost said, hey, I'm really going to miss spending time with him at the racetrack, or I'm going to miss being around him in the turf club, or whatever the situation was going to be. It made Burt sound like just one of the guys.
Yeah, he was. I'll tell you another funny story, Mike. The year that he had a horse in the Derby in back-to-back years, Afternoon Delights and Soul of the Matter, and I can't remember which of the 2 years this happened, but there were several of us out one night to dinner the night before the draw, and the draw was held later in the week that year than it is now. And we had gone into a used record shop, knowing Bacharach had a horse in the race, and in the this was one of the places on Bardstown Road in Louisville, and we found like some old record of his in the resale bin for like $3 and just bought it and brought it to the track the next day and took a group photo with him. He was a complete great sport about the whole thing. And a close friend of mine, Jay Posner, who just recently retired as the sports editor of the San Diego Union Tribune, but he was covering the Derby that year for the San Diego Union Tribune. He was the one who had actually shelled out the $3 for the album. And he asked Burt if he'd sign the cover to his wife, and he did. And they still have it as like a keepsake. So wow. That's kind of the kind of person he was. I mean, he was really a good sport about everything, and like I said, just loved racing. Was just very generous with his time, and we all know what a legacy he's left, and well aware of just the monumental success he had in the music business. And then you'd see him at the track, and you'd never know that he was like that big a deal because he was just very, very. He did not put on airs.
Aaron Wellman from Eclipse Thoroughbred Partners was a good friend of Burt Bacharach, and Burt was a partner of Eclipse Thoroughbreds. And Aaron tweeted this week and said that it was an honor to call Burt a friend, and he will forever remember the Blue Seas Music silks and the red Bill Shoemaker racing jacket. Tell me about that.
So the Blue Seas music silks, those were the silks that he had back in the days of like Heartlight number 1. They were powder blue, and there were musical notes on the back of the silks. Those were the silks that he had. And the Shoemaker jacket was just a jacket that he would wear on occasion to the track. When he wasn't wearing something that was fur lined, that was another signature look for Burt. But no, I mean he really loved racing. He was very close to a lot of people in racing. One of his first trainers was Charlie Whittingham. There's the famous story. This is not completely accurate in terms of the exact words that were said, but it was to the Burt was they'd gone on a cold streak, and Burt said something to Whittingham about how boy we haven't really been doing too well lately. And Whittingham just shot back, well, I haven't heard too many tunes coming out of that piano of yours lately either. It was basically like, stay in your lane. You know, I'll train the horses. I'm not going to, and I'm not going to be writing music, and, you know, you do you.
Michael Blowen with Old Friends sent out a post yesterday and pointed out the fact that they retired Afternoon Delights in 2011, two old friends. And he said Burt never forgot all of his great horses. And Michael, I did not know this, named the Champion Cemetery that they have after Burt's daughter, Nikki, and it's called Nikki's Garden. And I thought that was a nice touch, too. I had no idea that there was a connection there, but it's really cool to see Michael chiming in that fashion.
Yeah, no, Burt has been a longtime supporter of Old Friends, and Nikki was the daughter that Burt had with his actress wife, Angie Dickinson, and she passed away in her early 40s, and they've named that garden for her. And as you know, Afternoon Delights is at Old Friends, and you know the Bacharachs, Burt and his now widow Jane, have been longtime supporters of Old Friends in Georgetown.
I went back and watched an interview that was done with Burt. Oh, gosh, I guess it was about 20 years ago now, a television interview. And he pointed out in that interview, he was asked about whether or not he loved music from the beginning. And he said, no, I actually hated it. And he got into music to get girls because he was so short in high school. He was the shortest kid in his high school, and he said, I started with music to try to get girls. And I guess that worked because he did pretty good on that front. And then, of course, he goes on to this legendary career. So you never know where these things are going to start, Jay.
No, he had just an amazing life, so much success in so many ways. But the thing that I think most of us out here who knew him appreciate is that he shared it with people. He was just a very gracious person. I mean, I was fortunate enough to go over his home in Del Mar for dinner one night and was in his company on other occasions, and just he's just a really warm person, and he'll certainly be missed by many of us.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Jay Privman with me here on the Horse Racing Radio Network, remembering Burt Bacharach. And Jay, I want to segue here for the next couple of minutes before I have to get to a commercial break, and just congratulate you on your Special Eclipse Award for Career Excellence that you received this year in South Florida. Well deserved. We talked after you were inducted into the Hall of Fame this year, the Joe Hirsch Media Roll of Honor, and now we get a chance to reflect upon that Special Eclipse Award. Your acceptance speech was spot on, and congratulations, very well deserved.
Thanks, Mike. No, I appreciate you saying that, and congratulations to you for winning the Broadcasting Award last year again with HRRN for your Breeders' Cup coverage. So, yeah, it was a fun night, and I was really appreciative of that, and it was just nice to hear from so many people in the aftermath of that as well. So thank you for that. Did this come as a big surprise to you? I guess it had to, huh? Yes. Came completely out of the blue. I mean, Steve Christ called one day. It was about a week or so before the official announcement came out. I had to keep it under lock and key, but he called, and I thought he was just calling to say, hey, Happy New Year. I picked up the phone, and I said, hey, what's going on? He said, well, I have the pleasure of telling you. And I was like, oh, my God. It was completely unexpected. Jay, what have you enjoyed most about being involved with thoroughbred racing all these years? Well, it sort of touches on what we were just talking about earlier, Mike. It's just the people. And there's no way someone like me or you would have come into contact with some of the people that we've come in contact with, if not for being in racing, in terms of the celebrities and the wildly successful business people that we get to interact with, and on level ground, hanging out at Clocker's Corner, for instance, with someone like B. Wayne Hughes when he was living in California before he moved to Kentucky and recently passed, as we know. But just using that as an example, that's I think what I'll miss the most on a regular basis. And from a work standpoint, I really enjoyed the mornings, just being out there and watching horses train, getting information from trainers and jockeys and putting stories together. That part of it is what I'll miss. But I'm still going to come out on occasion. I just won't be on a deadline. Yeah, and it kind of came full circle for me as I was looking at these two conversations we were going to have during this interview this morning, because talking about Burt and then talking about your Eclipse Award, and one of your quotes in the article
after you were notified that you were going to receive this award, you said that you get very emotional seeing whose names have also won a Special Eclipse Award, like the greatest rider you've ever seen, Lafitte Pincay Jr. And then in the press release sent out by Santa Anita regarding Burt Bacharach, Lafitte was quoted in there saying that he rode the first horse Burt ever owned, a horse named Battle Royal, for Charlie Whittingham. So the Pincay connection for both you and Burt Bacharach just seemed appropriate for this conversation.
Yeah, and speaking of Lafitte and Burt's relationship, I mean, they were very close. And I remember in the aftermath of Lafitte's first wife tragically passing, Burt was extremely supportive of Lafitte and his children at the time, including, Lafitte Pincay III, who we all know has gone on to have just a wildly successful broadcasting career. So that family was, very close to the Bacharachs as well, and that's just the kind of person he was.
Yeah, well, Jay, it's always great to hear your voice, and I really appreciate you coming on here to remember Burt and to reflect upon your special night too. But certainly, Burt Bacharach on the minds of many in horse racing this weekend, as it should be. And appreciate the conversation, my friend. All the best, and we'll catch up again soon.
All right, thanks, Mike. Thanks for paying tribute to Burt. I appreciate it.
All right, Jay Privman here on the Horse Racing Radio Network, a fitting tribute to the legendary Burt Bacharach, who passed away at the age of 94. When I come back, I'll take a quick look at some historical dates in racing history, and I'll get you ready for hour number 3. This is the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing Radio Network.
On the battlefield, there's a saying America's military men and women live by. Never leave a fallen warrior behind, ever. Off the battlefield, Wounded Warrior Project operates with the same goal. We leave no warrior behind. Wounded Warrior Project is a non-profit organization created to help our men and women returning home with the scars of war. Whether those scars are physical or mental, we're here to make sure that they heal. And whether it's helping those with post-traumatic stress disorder live a normal life again, or giving much-needed support to injured warriors in veterans' hospitals. Because no one deserves our help more than the men and women who risk their lives to keep us safe. Wounded Warrior Project. We never leave a fallen warrior behind. Ever. Learn more about what we do at woundedwarriorproject.org.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick and proud aunt. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing. But not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. 1 in 6. That little girl sitting alone at the playground, she can't play like the other kids. She doesn't have the energy because she's hungry. School lunch will be her only meal today. It breaks my heart that this is the reality in our country, but it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste. This food is then provided to families and children in need. Being a kid should be about using your imagination, learning, and having fun. These children shouldn't have to miss out on simply being a kid because they're hungry. To find out how you can help end childhood hunger in your community, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
My battle buddies and I attended the NHL Stadium Series at Yankee Stadium. We had never been there before, and 2 of us had never seen a hockey game. Man, we had the time of our lives. It was great therapy. VetTix, we can't thank you enough.
Every empty seat at a concert, a game, motorsports, or a play is a missed opportunity to say thanks to a veteran and service member. We can help. We can give our veterans a special event where they too can create their own cherished memories. Find out how by visiting www.vettix.org. That's www.vettix.org. Find out how you can make a difference in a veteran's life.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Welcome back. Getting ready for hour number 3. It's going to be a busy one, which begins with the TwinSpires Triple Play. James Scully set to join me to give you 3 races to keep an eye on later today. Want to update you on the poll question before I tell you what's coming up for the rest of Hour 3. And the poll question today, and so many of you taking time to weigh in, really do appreciate that, is Wonder Wheel the best 3-year-old of any gender racing today? And so far, 75% of you saying no way. The other choice absolutely getting just 25%. So most of you thinking she is not the best 3-year-old of any gender racing today. I told you at the top of the show, I'm not sure that she's even the best 3-year-old in that race today. I think Julia Shining could turn out to be a monster. Wonder Wheel's the most accomplished, no doubt about it, but Julia Shining could turn out to be a monster. And if she wins today, defeats Wonder Wheel, well, then all of you who said no are going to be 100% correct. All right, coming up for the rest of Hour 3, you're going to hear that TwinSpires Triple Play. You're going to hear Kurt Becker with a special Valentine's edition of his Stroll Through Racing History, and Dale Romans and Tim Wilkin coming up at 10:30 Eastern with I Ask, They Answer. Couple dates in historical racing history as they apply to this weekend in thoroughbred racing. Yesterday, February 10th, 1998, the anniversary of undefeated 2-year-old champion favorite Trick being named 1997 Horse of the Year. That was a rare occurrence. It was today, February 11th, 1933, that the Jockey Club released data showing that as of 1932, the U.S. had surpassed Great Britain and Ireland in foal production for the first time to become the world's leading producer of thoroughbreds. Tomorrow, the anniversary of Julie Crone riding her first career winner, a $3,500 claimer named Lord Farkle. So a lot of things happening in thoroughbred racing this particular weekend. All right, Hour 3 of the Equine Forum is coming up next. Get a chance to kick it off with James Scully and the TwinSpires Triple Play. If your local station is leaving us at this time, you can continue listening to the third hour of the show nationwide on Sirius 216 XM 204 in the Louisville, Kentucky market on ESPN 680 or on your computer, phone, tablet. You can do that with our live streaming at horseracingradio.net. Hour 3 of the Equine Forum is up next, right after I pause 10 seconds for station identification. This is the Horse Racing Radio Network.
From the rail to your radio, this is the Horse Racing Radio Network.
It is early voting. Who is isolated here? A late move here from Gilded Age, Grantham, and towards the inside, Unoho. It is early voting. Who was on top right from the start, and early voting wins the Withers, wire to wire.
And here comes Rombauer on the outside. Rombauer with good-looking strides. Javanica, the filly, trying to hang tough, but Rombauer's up alongside these two to the finish together. Rombauer got there in a perfectly timed ride by Kyle Frey.
Welcome to the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires.
And Bluegrass Cat is taking the lead, and he's taking off. He's got a 3-length lead, opening up from Praying for Cash, who ran a huge race today. Strong contender is third. It is Bluegrass Cat. A romp in the Haskell. He won it by 7.
Bernardini has just inhaled Wandering Boy. Bernardini coming down to the final furlong. Just a hand ride for him today again. And Wandering Boy. And they're coming down to the finish. And once again, with nonchalant brilliance, Bernardini has won.
Now here's Mike Penna.
Welcome back. Hour number 3 of the Equine Forum. Mike Penna, Baron in the backstretch, continuing on into the final furlong of today's show. Plenty more content to come, including the TwinSpires Triple Play with James Scully, who will join me momentarily. Kurt Becker's Stroll Through Racing History is one that if you are one of those hopeless romantics looking ahead to Valentine's Day, this is a Valentine's Day edition of Kurt's Stroll Through Racing History. That segment presented every week by Keeneland. And we'll wrap up the show at 10:30 Eastern with the always popular Dale Romans and Tim Wilkin. They will join me for I Ask, They Answer, presented by the University of Louisville Equine Industry Program in the College of Business. So a lot of things to get to. And if you missed any portion of the first 2 hours of the program, talking about Wonder Wheel, and I posed the question at the top of the show, is Wonder Wheel the best 3-year-old of any gender competing today? Now, I'm not talking about the entire division, but I'm talking about today. The race is today. Is she the best 3-year-old of any gender competing today? She's the only champion we're going to see. Is she the one? I made the case that she is not. I don't even think she's the best necessarily in her own race today, the Suncoast. But I welcome your thoughts on that, too. You can email the show, mike@horseracingradio.net. Keep those emails coming. You can also hit us up on Twitter, @HRRN, Horse Racing Radio Network on Facebook, another way to get in touch with the show and voice your opinions. All right, without further ado, it is time to welcome James Scully for this week's TwinSpires Triple Play. James, good morning, my friend.
Good morning, Mike. Pleasure to be on with you. Be a big day of horse racing.
Yeah, huge day of horse racing. Those 3 Derby points races, and then I mentioned Wonder Wheel going in the Suncoast. A lot of implications across the board for the 3-year-old division. Probably even see some contenders coming out of some allowance races later today across the country. And a good time to be a racing fan. And James, as always, you've picked a lot of variety with your 3 races today.
That's right, and I did. I picked one of them is the Withers, which is one of our Derby qualifiers, Kentucky Derby qualifiers today. But I did pick a 3-year-old maiden race at Aqueduct, and you're right. Right now, I just feel like the potential is still there. None of the horses that are stakes proven have overwhelmed me, so the potential is still there for a maiden or allowance type horse to come along. Important to remember, 10 of the horses, half the field last year in the Derby, only had 4 or 5 starts to their credit. So there's still time for these lightly raced horses to make the Derby for sure.
Yeah, it's a great point. We are going to focus on 3 races here, as we do every week with the TwinSpires Triple Play. You can play them any way you like, but we encourage you to go over to TwinSpires.com and make your wagers and get them in early before all the action gets going later today. All right, James, let's kick it off. We're going to go in post-position order, which means we're going to start with the 6th at Aqueduct. That's a 3-year-old maiden special weight sprint race, which I think is cool. And then we're going to come back to Tampa Bay Downs, race 8, the Pelican Stakes. And then, as you mentioned, we'll wrap it up with the Grade 3 Withers at Aqueduct, which is race number 9. So the 6th at Aqueduct, maiden special weight, 3-year-olds sprinting 6 furlongs on the main track. Tell me more about this one.
Yes, it's a race where you have a couple of first-time starters on the morning line that are the morning line favorites. I'm going to try to beat both of them. I'll just mention them real quickly. Number 9 for Brad Cox, the Ever So Mischievous. It's an End of Mischief colt. He just got this colt, though, in November. He sold for $85,000 in the Keeneland November sale as part of a racing dispersal. So I'm going to perhaps give him a race in this spot. I didn't think he's got a couple of works at Belmont. And then Moore's Law for Chad Brown is a horse that had been training at Payson Park, and they've shipped him up, and they're running him in this race at First Stir for Good Magic. They both could be dangerous. I landed, however, on number 4, When Love Takes Over. And this is a More Spirit colt that debuted on January 6th. I thought in a pretty good maiden race. The winner that day was an Eric Gate colt, a first-time starter, uncorrelated for Chad Brown. And I thought he might be odds on. He wound up going off 2-1, and one of the horses that was taking money right into him was number 4, When Love Takes Over. He got bet down to 6-1 at first asking, and he completely flubbed the break. Mike was off dead last. And after that, on the sloppy track, he traveled extremely wide. But when he went in the far turn, When Love Takes Over, I thought, grinded his way nicely to be in contention, turn it for home. And then he offered a really good turn of foot to power his way to be like almost a length second in between calls, half length second. Looked like he was easily going to get the place, and he got nailed right on the wire by a couple horses that didn't lose all the ground and didn't flub the start and and were much more experienced than he was. So I thought that was a great debut to build upon. And what I like is he shows a couple of quick drills in the interim that would indicate that they're hoping to get out of the gate better when Love Takes Over. He's trained by Andrew Lakeman, who's real easy to root for, doesn't have a lot of horses. But has trained as stakes winners before, and so I'm looking for a big showing from number 4, When Love Takes Over, in race 6 at Aqueduct today.
James, I mentioned Kurt's Valentine's edition of his Stroll Through Racing History segment coming up after this segment here. Is this your Valentine's Day selection, When Love Takes Over?
Yes, I guess.
You're such a romantic.
I really am. Yeah.
On a serious note, I love your angle though. That middle move type of angle in races is a move that I've had a lot of success with. If you can pick up those nuances and find those horses that make these good middle moves, especially in their first career start when they're still learning, even if they flatten out late, and as happened when Love takes over, even if they get beat at the end, that middle move and that experience they gain usually helps them going forward. So I love this angle.
Yeah, and one thing about that is you see a horse make a little bit of middle move, and they come back and work slowly. I don't think that's too encouraging. I like the fact that brought him back, and 2 weeks ago he went 48-4 on the training track at Belmont, which can be a slower work track. It was the 5th fastest of 94 works that day. Then they gave him a little maintenance drill that was still pretty quick, 31st of 85. So I think he's sharpened up his training in the mornings, and he's going to continue to show more.
All right, 5-1 on the morning line for When Love Takes Over in the 6th race at Aqueduct for James Scully. That is the first leg of this week's TwinSpires Triple Play. For the next leg, we're going to take you from New York down to Tampa Bay Downs, and we'll go to the 6-furlong Pelican Stakes, which is race number 8, purse of $100,000, and this one for the older sprinters should be a pretty good renewal. How'd you see this one?
I'm going to take, this race is going to have a huge favorite in number 5, Sibelius, and I'm going to try to beat him with number 2, Pacos Pico. And let me just say this about Sibelius. He got really good last August, September for Jeremiah O'Dwyer. He ran huge numbers in a Saratoga and the Pimlico Stakes wins, getting 106, 105 Brisnet speed ratings. His next race after those 2 efforts was a 4th in the Phoenix to Manny Wall, Long Range Toddy. It was not that good a race I didn't think, considering his 2 races. And naturally, his speed ratings have dropped in the last 3 starts. I thought that Mr. Prospector was a little bit of a mirage where the horses behind him, it was just a real soft addition of that race. And I think he's going up against tougher today. I like number 2, Pacos Pico, going to Stakes Company. And Mike, this is a 4-year-old gelding by Candy Ride, who last year in the winter and into the spring was just starting to get good, starting to improve when he was sidelined in May. And he's come back with 3 races that are much, much better. And the thing that I like about Pacos Pico in this spot is that his form, his rapidly improving form, I believe, is hidden because he's coming off 2 losses. In those races, after he came back and just drilled a decent field on November 19th at 6 furlongs, an allowance race at Gulfstream, he came back in his next start and was in it until, deep stretch. He gets beat by Endorsed, who came back and won the Harlan's Holiday by open lengths, and the horse that ran second was a stakes type as well. And then last time out, he was in against Candyman Rocket. Belmont has Candyman Rocket, Elite Power. They're pointing for Grade 1 stakes this year. And with Elite Power going to overseas, Candyman Rocket has races like the Carter and Met Mile right on his agenda. He could be a real good sprinter this year if he stays healthy. That was a really good race by Pacos Pico to be second that day. He's going to get the perfect setup. One thing I always mention, I like the Brisnet Ultimate PPs, and if you get them at TwinSpires and make a wager on that day's card, you can get them for free. And you can just see in Pacos Pico's, he was earning class ratings, Mike, earlier until he got sidelined last year in like the 115 range. Now he's earning numbers in the 118, 119. His recent speed ratings, 99 and 96, are on par with Sibelius's numbers. And as opposed to that horse, I think it's going in the opposite direction. I think Pacos Pico's going in straightforward direction. Picks up Tyler Gaffleon's going to get a good trip just off the speed from the inside. I'm going with number 2, Pacos Pico in the Pelican Stakes.
Good price, too, 8-1 on Pacos Pico. And you spent some time talking about his last race where he was behind Candyman Rocket, finishing second. The horse that was third in that race, Absolute Grit, is also back in this race today, the Pelican Stakes. Do you like Absolute Grit to kind of be in the mix maybe with Pacos Pico, or is he just not that caliber?
I do. And I took a long look at him, and I think he's going to hit the board. I really do. I would take it 2-8, Pacos Pico, Absolute Grit. Sibelius is a favorite I'm taking a stand against.
Yeah, Absolute Grit, 12-1. So if you can get 8-1, 12-1, if those odds hold true, boy, what an exacta that would be. And maybe you flip them around, too, just in case. Just do an exacta box with Paco's Pico, number 2, and number 8, Absolute Grit in that Pelican. All right, back to New York we go. Aqueduct Race 9, the final leg of the TwinSpires Triple Play. You have come up with the Grade 3 Withers as your final leg, and this is a race that we were supposed to see last weekend, rescheduled because of the inclement weather in New York. And this year's renewal looks like it goes through just a couple of horses, but maybe I'm wrong, James. What do you think?
I think that Remsen was a good effort by Dubnell, and Arctic Arrogance ran second. But I think that speed number, it got a little bit faulty due to the sloppy track and the big margins. Arctic Arrogance came back off that runner-up effort and ran a slower race in the Jerome. And even though he lost by half length, I didn't think he was really ever going to go by the winner. And the thing with Hit Show, that he's the morning line favorite. Hit Show's the second choice on the morning line. Never been better than fifth at the first call of any of his races. I thought Invulnerable came back. We beat last time. He really had to grind his way past him. Ran poorly in his next start. And I don't like betting horses. Hit Show has an 89 speed rating, top number. I don't like betting horses at low odds in these Derby qualifiers with low speed ratings. I think that's a formula that I always tried to adhere to. I have landed on number 6, 90% Maddie. And this is a colt for Butch Reed, who's always dangerous, based at Parks. He won his first 3 starts really nicely, went in the Pennsylvania nursery and missed the start that day, Mike, and rushed up to contend for the lead along the rail. Looked like to me he got claustrophobic, didn't like to be there, started backing out. When he got it in the clear again, he came again. And then it was more the same last time in the Parks Juvenile, except that he finished much more boldly against a really nice winner in Recruit, who's 4 for 4, has been even money or odds on in all 4 races and has a future in stakes. I think 90% Maddie going from the rail the last 2 races, or post 1 or the inside the last 2 races to post 6 is absolutely all that this horse could ask for. I think he's going to be on the front end from the start, and I like his chances to move forward in this race and prove best in the Withers, 8-1 on the morning line.
Yeah, I like that pick. There is some other speed in here, including the horse just to his outside, Andiamo Firenze, and I think that could make it a little bit interesting, but I do like the selection. I think that 90% Maddie is a horse that's going to be up close and in contention, even if not on the lead, as you suggested, maybe right up in the mix early.
And let me just say, in his first 3 races that he won, he never had a horse on the outside of him, like the entire, you know what I'm saying, Mike? He doesn't like being on the inside of horses, and he's going to be, I think, I'm hoping to me, Andiamo Firenze, I don't know what happened in that last race, but he didn't show good speed. And the horse that I think is going to go forward is Arctic Arrogance with blinkers. So even if 90% Maddie's racing right beside him, I won't be concerned because I think he's going to have something left to finish with.
All right, James Scully bringing it here on the TwinSpires Triple Play for you. 3 somewhat long shot selections, at least none of those going to go postward as the favorite. He'll take number 4, When Love Takes Over, at 5-1 in the 6th race at Aqueduct. That's a maiden special weight event. In race 8 at Tampa Bay Downs, the Pelican Stakes, he'll go with number 2, Paco's Pico. I can say that, Paco's Pico, at odds of 8-1. And in the Wither Stakes, race 9 at Aqueduct, 90% Maddie at 8-1. So 5-1, 8-1, 8-1. I'm assuming that these races were by design, James, where you had favorites in there you thought maybe were vulnerable, and maybe we can get a little bit of a price.
Absolutely. I mean, yes. I mean, 100%, Mike. You know, the maiden race a little bit. Those races are a little bit of a different dynamic. Where I just that horse. I watched that race. At Aqueduct, and I took a trip note on that When Love Takes Over, and then went and reviewed it again. So he's a horse that I just really sort of like. But the other 2 are 100% playing against, I think, vulnerable favorites with horses that have something to offer.
How much time do you spend making trip notes?
I don't spend that much time. If there's something I see, I like to jot it down, and I'll just write the race and note the horse. But I don't do too much note taking. So I have a lot of notes, one thing I also do is I see these horses that run races that I think are going to be confused the next time. They're essentially, my friend Scott Shapiro labels them the pig list, and I'm not going to say it like that, but they're horses that I think are going to be vulnerable next time and at shorter odds. So it works both ways, where I'm just trying to note those horses when I see it at the time, and then I'll come back and go back over it and don't do too much detail. It's just noting the races and horse.
Yeah, the reason I ask you that question, James, is because I remember when I was really spending a ton of time handicapping. This goes back, 8 or 9 years ago, and I dove right into it. And I was saving clippings of charts. I would go back and I would print them off, and I would cut them out of the paper, and I would do all these things. And I had notepads with different things written down about every race. And let me tell you, it was, number one, time consuming. It was also exhausting. And every once in a while I'd find something that would pay off, but I never thought that the time I was putting in was justified by the results I was getting. That's why I asked you how much time you spend doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's just real key to watch. If you're going to follow it and play seriously, it's key to watch as many races as you can. And
yep.
Because you're going to see these horses come back, and you got a little bit of head start on them instead of just sitting down and looking at the fifth race today and looking at these horses for the first time.
Yeah. Watching replays, I think, is invaluable. I agree 100%. And maybe it's just the fact that I was terrible at picking winners. Maybe that's why I don't do it anymore. Right? It has nothing to do with the time commitment. It was the fact that I was awful at all of that. But no, man, I appreciate it. I can tell you this, the Brisnet past performances have changed my success rate. They've changed the way that I look at races now, and I can't imagine handicapping with anything else.
Yeah, they are. They're absolutely fantastic. Like I said, we got that and lots of handicapping reports available at both Brisnet and TwinSpires, and we will and we got the Kentucky Derby Future Wager Pool 4 this weekend. So I love the aspect this year, Mike, with 40 individual entrants instead of 39 individuals. Creates a lot of value.
Yep, yeah, it certainly does. James Scully, TwinSpires Triple Play. Head over to TwinSpires.com and bet those 3 races any way you like. James, appreciate it. We'll talk to you in a few weeks, my friend.
Have a great weekend.
All right,
bye, Mike.
Don't forget, you can call in and talk racing with James Scully and Bobby Neuman every single Thursday from 6 to 7 Eastern with the Brisnet.com call-in show that's right here on these very same Sirius XM channels and streaming worldwide at horseracingradio.net. You can check out the podcast of this week's show right now on our website, too. All right, coming up next, Kurt Becker takes you on his weekly Stroll Through Racing History, and then at 10:30 Eastern, I Ask, They Answer with Dale Romans and Tim Wilkin. That is all ahead on the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
Race to TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Sam Houston's live thoroughbred meet runs through April 8th and features a new afternoon racing schedule for 2023 with racing Friday through Sunday and a first post at 1 p.m. Central. The meet is highlighted by the Houston Racing Festival on Saturday, January 28th, Texas Preview Day on February 18th, and Texas Champions Day March 25th. Canadian racing fans are invited to play Sam Houston at simulcast outlets throughout Canada and on HPI Bet. For more information, visit shrp.com.
Curling, the classic sire.
They're off in the Derby City disdain. An obligatory, and it's gotta be Clariere in the Tip Stakes. Nest, much the best. She won by better than 10 lengths in this coaching club. American Oaks, Cody's Wish with the upset in the Fargo, and Marathon has won the Personal Ensign Stakes.
Curling, standing at Hill and Dale.
It's time now to shine the spotlight on the Darley Taking the Reins Performer of the Week.
A breathtaking run at the top of the stretch. Kicks clear by 6. Maxfield to win the Claiborne Breeders' Futurity.
Maxfield digs down deep. to win it. Maxfield wins the Clark. His Churchill dominance continues.
After breaking his maiden at first asking, Darley Stallion Maxfield began and ended his career with those brilliant Grade 1 victories, winning the prestigious Breeders' Futurity at 2 and the Grade 1 Clark in his final career start, making Maxfield your Darley taking the reins Performer of the Week. Darley Stallion Maxfield, a winner in 8 of 11 starts, he stands alongside his sire, Street Sense, for $40,000. And first foals by multiple Grade 1 winner Maxfield are arriving now as he enters his second season at stud this year. Learn more about Maxfield and all the Darley Stallions by visiting DarleyAmerica.com.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Hello, I'm Kurt Becker. Thanks for joining me as I take another stroll through racing history presented by Keeneland. The public fell in love with him because of a heart-shaped birthmark on his forehead. Eclipse champion trainer Todd Pletcher played a key role in his existence despite having never trained him. And he was a horse which never won a Grade 1 race until he was 7 years of age. His name was Heart to Heart. The story of Heart to Heart actually begins before he was ever foaled. Daryl Bauder, owner of Red Hawk Ranch in Alberta, Canada, was looking to breed a mare to a U.S. stallion, and he was searching for value on a limited budget. The answer came in the form of a season to champion English Channel, a season which was donated to the annual Thoroughbred Charities of America fundraising auction by trainer Todd Pletcher. Bauder bought the season and bred a mare named Ask the Question to English Channel, and the resultant foal, born on February 2nd, 2011, was a bay colt with an unusual birthmark on his forehead. The birthmark was in the shape of a heart. Someone said it resembled a folded paper valentine, and so it was that the bay colt eventually got his name, Heart to Heart. Purchased by Terry Hamilton for $25,000 at a yearling sale at Woodbine Racecourse in Toronto, Heart to Heart began his racing career at Arlington Park in Chicago as a 2-year-old in July of 2013. Trained by Michael Stidham and ridden by James Graham, the colt won by 8 lengths on an all-weather surface as the 9-5 favorite. Transferred to the barn of trainer Brien Lynch the following season, Heart to Heart would win a stakes at Saratoga and a pair of graded stakes at Churchill Downs, all on the turf, and would earn the Sovereign Award as Canada's champion 3-year-old male for 2014. As a 4-year-old, Heart to Heart added graded stakes turf victories at both Monmouth Park and Churchill, and he was beginning to capture the public's attention for more than just his facial markings. Horse players were developing a fondness for Heart to Heart because of his front-running, all-or-nothing style. Each race, he went straight to the lead and made everyone else play catch-up. At age 5, Heart to Heart opened with back-to-back graded stakes wins at Gulfstream Park. It was then that his connections decided it was time to test him at the Grade 1 level. Twice in 2016, Heart to Heart went to the post in Grade 1 races on the turf. He was second in the Makers 46 at Keeneland before finishing 4th in the Shoemaker Mile at Santa Anita. The following year, he ran in 4 Grade 1 events, hitting the board in 3 of them, yet falling short of victory. Heart to Heart returned to Gulfstream in February of 2018 for the Grade 1 Gulfstream Park Turf Stakes. The betting public, despite his 0-for-6 record at the top level, made him the post-time favorite. Pete Aiello with the call.
As they run to the top of the stretch, it's Heart to Heart and Julian Leparoux off the turn with the lead. Into the clear, here's Kurlov to try to track him down second. Down the outside and High Happy from between horses. That's a 1 go, all go. Less than 1/8 of a mile to go, and Heart to Heart's digging in. Kurlov surging at him one more time. Heart to Heart, Kurlov late. Here's the finish. Heart to Heart is all heart and gets the Grade 1 score in the Gulfstream Park turf.
Aiello's race call had captured the moment. At 7 years of age and in his 34th career start, Heart to Heart had finally earned status as a Grade 1 winner. And just for good measure, he added the Grade 1 Makers 46 at Keeneland in his next start.
Top of the stretch, Heart to Heart, the leader by a length. Is second. Bacharach looks for some running room in third toward the inside. Frostmorn in fourth. Into the final furlong of the Makers 46 mile. Heart to Heart leads it by 2.5 lengths to Bacharach. Between horses. Frostmorn then Forge. Heart to Heart. In front by 3 lengths. Heart to Heart wins it.
Heart to Heart retired from racing the following year with $2 million in career earnings and 11 graded stakes victories to his credit. Inducted into the Canadian Racing Hall of Fame and retired to stallion duty in Kentucky, his first foals will make their debut at the races this spring. His breeder recalled that when Heart to Heart was a baby, he was athletic and playful and had an effortless way of moving. His owner once said that Heart to Heart was the horse of a lifetime. And trainer Lynch offered a trainer's perspective, calling him a beautiful, sound horse. But maybe Julien Leparoux said it best. The French-born jockey rode Heart to Heart in each of his Grade 1 victories, including that triumph at Keeneland, which came before a record Friday crowd of 28,000. The fans cheered Heart to Heart with sustained applause that day as he returned in front of the stands. As Leparoux dismounted, someone asked for his thoughts on the horse. Leparoux responded with 3 words: everybody loves him. Please join me again next week when I take another stroll through racing history presented by Keeneland. For HRRN, I'm Kurt Becker.
And once again, my thanks to Kurt and to Keeneland for making those segments possible each and every week. If you have missed any of Kurt's Stroll Through Racing History segments, all you have to do is head back over to our website, horseracingradio.net. You can check out the special podcast page dedicated to those stories and listen to every single one. There have been some amazing ones. Go back and listen at horseracingradio.net. When I come back, Dale Romans, Tim Wilkin, they will be here. It is this week's edition of I Ask, They Answer. This is the Equine Forum, presented by TwinSpires on HRRN.
Race to TwinSpires, where you can unlock a $25 risk-free bet. Just use the code HRRN25 when you sign up. And if your first bet doesn't win, TwinSpires will refund your account up to $25. Wagering on the app is fast with free past performances, insider picks, and power plays every day you wager. TwinSpires. Download the app today to earn your $25 risk-free bet. Void where prohibited. For terms and conditions, visit TwinSpires.com. Must be 18 or older, 21 and older where applicable. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Tenda Equine and Pet Care products have been keeping world-class equine athletes happy and healthy for generations. Keep your equine athlete looking and performing well with Tenda Next Generation Wound and Skin Care Treatment, along with nutritional supplements, leg and muscle care products, salves, hoof care, poultice, topical aids, and grooming products. Visit tendahorse.com today.
New to Coolmore America for 2023 is Jack Christopher. A son of top sire Munnings and a 3-time Grade 1 winner, Jack Christopher was an 8 3/4 length winner on debut at Saratoga at 2 before winning the Grade 1 Champagne with a whopping 102 Beyer. His 3-year-old campaign included wins in the Grade 2 Pat Day Mile, the Grade 1 Woody Stevens by 10 lengths, and the Grade 1 H. Allen Jerkins. Jack Christopher stands at an introductory fee of $45,000. Call the team at Ashford today to book your mare before he fills up.
Grade 1 winner and track record setter Lee. Like their sire, his runners have excelled on both dirt and turf, including these standout performers.
Poppy Flower is kicking in. Poppy Flower with the momentum. Nagarok, they come on for the finish, and it is going to be Nagarok.
Out of a Galileo mare, this dual surface star has sired juvenile stakes winners on both dirt and turf. Lee, standing at Claiborne Farm.
You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Cat Thief digging in at the rail. Worldly Matter with Jared Bailey. Charismatic trained by Lucas on the outside. Now Lucas running 1-2. Charismatic on the outside. Takes command. On the inside, Cat Thief in the middle of the track. Menifee is flying, but it's Charismatic holding on to win it by a hand. Menifee flying on the outside. And Cat Thief, I believe, was third. What a dramatic victory as Charismatic and Chris Handley team up to get the roses for Lucas.
That's Dave Johnson with the call of Charismatic's victory in the 1999 Kentucky Derby under late jockey Chris Antley. 3 starts prior to winning the Kentucky Derby, he finished second in the El Camino Real Derby, which is, by the way, the only points race on today's schedule to have produced a Derby winner. Which of today's 3 Derby preps is most likely to give us this year's winner of the Kentucky Derby? Plus, are Dale and Tim buying or selling some of the top Derby contenders? And is Champion Wonder Wheel the best 3-year-old of any gender racing this weekend? We'll talk about those topics and much, much more coming up on this week's edition of I Ask, They Answer with trainer Dale Romans and turf writer Tim Wilkin. And it's all presented by the University of Louisville Equine Industry Program in the College of Business. And it all starts just 30 seconds from right now.
Learn the business of horses in the world's only accredited equine business program, the University of Louisville Equine Business Program. The University of Louisville has a legacy of excellence educating and developing industry leaders for over 35 years. Classes are taught by industry experts in state-of-the-art facilities located in the heartland of America's equine industry. The University of Louisville Equine Business Program. When it comes to horses, we mean business. For more information, visit business.louisville.edu/equine.
All right, plenty of things to get to on this week's edition of the show. We dive in with the first topic, which is based on the El Camino Real Derby and the fact, believe it or not, it is the only Derby points race slated for today to have produced a Derby winner. And as we just heard, it was Charismatic in 1999. So, guys, I'm going to ask you this, and Timmy, I'll come to you first. Which race, the Withers, the Sam F. Davis, or the El Camino Real Derby, is most likely to provide us with a Derby winner this year?
None of them. Not a one. None of those 3 races will have the Derby winner.
Okay, suppose one of them does.
If one of them does, then I'm a dummy. But I'm looking at some of the horses that are running in these races, and to me, they're not upper tier 3-year-olds. The Withers, Linda Rice's horse, Arctic Arrogance. The 8-5 favorite was second in the Remsen to W. Nell, who's running the Sam Davis. To me, none of these races really jump out and say there's a horse in here that's going to win on the first Saturday in May. But maybe if the winner of the Withers might win the Preakness, because early voting did that last year. And in the El Camino, the only thing that's kind of interesting is that Baffert's got 2 3-year-olds in there that are probably 2 that are under the radar a little bit, Gilmore and Nullarbor. Nullabor's a $500,000 purchase, but it took him 3 chances to break his maiden. And none of these races are getting my blood pumping as we head, towards the first Saturday in May. I just don't see any of these horses jumping up and winning that race and then jump up and go on to win in Kentucky. The Withers, before 2012, it was run later in the spring. Sir Barton won that race. Here's my history lesson for the day. Sir Barton won that race after winning the 19 Derby and Preakness. Then he won the Withers. So the Withers doesn't get me going at all. So neither does the Sam Davis, and neither does the El Camino.
That's interesting. But I agree. It's doubtful that a Derby winner will come out of here. But one thing is for sure, if one of these horses does win the Kentucky Derby, the winner of the Derby is going to pay a whole lot.
Yeah.
These horses will be as the fringe players when it comes time. But if I had to pick one, I'm going Sam Davis, just because it's a nice little racetrack and it's a good place to come off of. And there has been some success coming out of Tampa with Fletcher trapping some horses there that have run well. So if I had to pick one, I'll say Sam Davis.
And I think to Timmy's point that he made earlier, maybe if you want to win the Preakness Stakes, winning one of these races is a good thing, or competing in one of these races is a good thing to do. And there have been, it's kind of mind-boggling when you think about some of the horses that have won these 3 prep races today, and the fact that only the El Camino Real has produced a Derby winner. You think of the Sam F. Davis, and you see names like Bluegrass Cat and Any Given Saturday, and Destin, Classic Causeway last year, who went on to win some big races. The Withers, you go back to Bernardini, who won the Withers in 2006, and then, as we know, went on to a tremendous career. A Fleet again. Early voting last year. I think, Timmy, you're right. If you're looking to win big races down the road, the Derby's probably not the race you're going to win if you're competing in these races, but other races up the road are certainly well within your wheelhouse.
Yeah, this is still the the preliminaries, I think, before the big time preps come and get us. So I'm very comfortable saying we aren't going to see a Derby winner out of any of these 3 races.
You're right. The next 2 rounds are where it gets serious. When you get to the 50-point and the 100-point races, that's where you're going to find your Derby winner.
Dale, it gets serious at the 50-point races, but you gotta get past these first to get to the 50-point ones, right?
Yeah, you need to. But that's when we're going to start seeing where the Derby winner might be coming from, especially those mile 8. You start stretching them out a little bit further.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll find out in just about 8 weeks or so, I guess, or maybe a little bit longer. What is it? February, March, April, May, 12 weeks? Is that what we are away from the Kentucky Derby?
We got a lot to talk about between now and then.
All kinds of things to talk about. How about this one? There have been 7 Derby points races contested so far this year. So we're going to play a little game of buy or sell with the winners of those races. And we're only going to focus on 6 because the news came out yesterday that Newgate is now off the Derby trail after winning the Robert B. Lewis last weekend. He has a hock issue. He's going to be sidelined for a couple of months, so he will not make the Kentucky Derby. But I will give you the winners of the other 6 points races that have been run so far in 2023. You guys tell me if you were buying or selling those horses. Tim, I'll start with you. Smarty Jones winner, Victory Formation. Buying or selling?
Buying. This
Dale?
is one of the horses out of the Brad Cox barn. That's he's won his first 3. He's got the running style that is perfect for the Derby. You know, he likes to be on or near the pace, and I think that his numbers have gone up in each race. And I think that Victory Formation, before they get to Churchill, is going to be at either the top or right near the top of the Brad Cox army of horses that come into the Derby. I mean, he's a son of Tappert, and he should be able to run all day, so the amount of quarters shouldn't be an issue. And, you know, I'm definitely buying on him.
Dale, buying or selling Victory Formation?
Selling. More or less just to be obstinate and argue with my man there, Tim.
All right, so that's Victory Formation. Tim will buy. Dale will sell. Jerome winner, Lugan Knight. Timmy, take it first. Since Dale went the other way, how you doing with Lugan Knight?
Definitely selling on him. He won the Jerome. He was the 3rd choice in the field of 7. He was Victory Formation. He couldn't beat him in the allowance race last year. He's going to take another shot in New York, probably in the Gotham. We'll see what he does there. But right now, as far as being a Derby horse for me, I'm selling for sure.
Dale?
Yeah, selling. Let's sell him too. He's not going to get there just for all the same reasons Tim talked about. I can't argue with you on any of this stuff, Tim.
All right, nobody in the camp of Lugan Knight. How about the Sham Stakes winner, Reincarnate? Dale, why don't you take this one first?
I'm going to sell him just because I don't really know much about him. Let's just sell him, and I think there's better ones on the list.
Tim?
I'm going to sell him too. He's from the Baffert barn. He went for $775,000. He's by Good Magic, but it took him 4 tries to break his maiden. Then he won this Sham by a neck, and he went off at 16-1, the longest shot in the field. Those aren't the credentials I want for a Derby horse, so I'm selling.
All right. Reincarnate, a sell for both Dale and for Tim. It leaves us with 3 more to go, and they're big ones. The LeCompte Stakes winner, Instant Coffee. Dale, which way are you going to go here?
I'm buying Instant Coffee. He came out of the Churchill race. He's, I just think he's a quality animal. I think he can keep on moving forward. A lot of room to improve.
I'm going to buy on him as well. I mean, he's won 3 of his 4 races, and this is another Brad Cox horse. And in a lot of people's minds, he might be, right now, the top Brad Cox horse for the Derby. I mean, 3 of his 4 starts have been in graded stakes. I mean, he was 6-5 favorite to win the LeCompte when he won LeCompte in the field of 6 by 2.5 lengths. I think that he's got a very high ceiling, and as we go forward, I think he's going to be a major player.
Now, Timmy buying both of the Brad Cox horses we've talked about so far. Timmy, you're going to make Bob Baffert jealous with all this Brad Cox talk, but I'm going to give you the chance to redeem yourself right now. How about the Southwest Stakes winner, Arabian Night, from the barn of the Hall of Famer Bob Baffert? Are you buying or selling?
Well, yeah, I'm buying.
No, are you?
Yeah. I mean, right now, I think he might be the most talented 3-year-old out there. I mean, he's won He's undefeated in 2 starts, broke his maiden by 7 1/4, won the Southwest by 5 1/2. He's a $2.3 million purchase. I mean, he just might very well be the best 3-year-old in training. But here's the caveat. He doesn't have any Derby points because of Bob's suspension at Churchill. So he's going to have to move to another barn by the end of the month so he can get some points. I mean, it would be a shame if this horse didn't get points to get into the Derby, because I think he's easily right now the best 3-year-old in training.
Dale, buy or sell?
Buying and buying big. I think he's the best horse out there right now. Spoke to Bob a couple of days ago. He's very high on this horse. And, they're going to have to change names. But I would tell you this, I think there could be a different twist in this year's Derby compared to last. Bob is not on a commission suspension. He can put him in someone else's name and still interact with the people who are handling the horse without getting in trouble with any commissions. This is strictly a Churchill kicking him off thing. I think you'll see Bob Baffert's horses running like Bob Baffert's horses at this year's Derby.
All right, both of them buying Arabian Night with Dale and Tim here this morning. One final one, and Dale, I'm coming to you first because you got a first-hand look at this horse last weekend in the Holy Bull Stakes. That is winner Rocket Can. Buy or sell?
I'm buying. I think he's handled by my favorite horse trainer, active right now, and I think he'll just keep getting better and better. I know his numbers weren't good. A lot of people are going to criticize the race, but I think you're going to see an improving horse.
Timmy?
I'm selling. No offense, Dale, but I didn't think the Holy Bull was the strongest edition of the race we've ever seen. But Bill Mott has been on he's been on some kind of hot streak. I mean, he's got the week before he won the Pegasus with Art Collector, then he runs 1-2 in this race. Yeah, his numbers weren't great. He seems a nice horse. I don't know if he's a great horse. So I'm not, as far as Derby goes, I'm going to be a seller on this one.
And Timmy, I would agree with you if it wasn't for the Mott factor. I think Billy's on a roll right now. He's really into what he's doing.
And he's owned by Frank Fletcher, who names all of his horses with Rocket for his dog.
Yep.
Yeah. There you have it. Buy or sell Tim and Dale's opinion on the prep race winners so far in 2023. There will be plenty more to come. We'll bring that segment back when we get a few more winners under our belt, getting closer to the first Saturday in May. All right, guys, we go from talking about Hall of Famer Bill Mott to welcoming our good friend Nick Zito in this week's edition of Right or Wrong.
Yeah, right or wrong. Am I right? What do you think?
No,
right
Nikki, let's find out if they think that I am right or wrong with these next 3 statements. Well, Wonder Wheel, guys, if I were to say that Wonder Wheel is the best 3-year-old of any gender racing this weekend, Dale Romans, would I be right or wrong?
Yeah, right or wrong. Am I right? What do you think? Right or wrong?
You're 100% right on this one. I believe that if I had to bet on a 3-year-old this weekend, I would be betting on her if she was running in any of the Derby preps. And my good friend Mark Cassidy, he will step outside the box, so don't be surprised if she doesn't show up in a colt race with points.
Yeah, I agree with Dale on that. I think that's right. I mean, of all the horses running today, the 3-year-olds, Wonder Wheel, even though this is her first start since the Breeders' Cup, has a world of talent. And Mark Cassidy has been, singing her praises forever. But the one interesting thing about this, in the race at the Tampa today, she's going to run against Julia Shining from Todd Pletcher, who won the Demoiselle in her last start. And this daughter of Curlin looks like she has a future. I don't think it's going to be so. With her in the race, I don't think you're going to see Wonder Wheel at 1-5. But Wonder Wheel will be the favorite. But I think she'll get a test from Julia Shining. But, yeah, I think of the 3-year-olds running today, she's head and shoulders the best.
Yeah, Julia Shining, a full sister to Champion Malathot, and I'm not even sold Wonder Wheel is the best 3-year-old in that race. I think it may turn out to be Julia Shining, but we'll find out later today. All right, yesterday marked the 25-year anniversary of 2-year-old champion Favorite Trick, also being named Horse of the Year. That turned out to be the weakest Horse of the Year decision ever made by voters. Tim Wilkin, is that statement right or wrong?
What do you think? Right or wrong?
Well, weak is a very tricky word. I think that Favorite Trick that year, 2-year-olds don't win Horse of the Year. He was the first one to do it since Secretariat. did it in his 2-year-old year in 72. Favorite Trick won all 8 of his starts. I mean, he had a great record, but the horses that, were also in consideration that year, Silver Charm won the Derby and the Preakness. Didn't run after the Belmont until, I think it was the Malibu at the end of the year. And then the Breeders' Cup Classic champion Skip Away. I mean, he won the Classic and he won the Jockey Club Gold Cup. I mean, Favorite Trick obviously never ran against older horses. I mean, there's no denying that Favorite Trick was a phenomenal 2-year-old. Do I think that, he should have been the horse of the year that year with those other guys that were in the hunt? No. I back then I didn't have a vote. I wouldn't have voted for Favorite Trick. I think I would have voted for Silver Charm. I mean, when you win the biggest race that the sport has in the Kentucky Derby, then win the Preakness, and then you just miss in the Belmont to be a Triple Crown winner, I think that's got to be your horse of the year. No offense to Favorite Trick, who won his race by 28 some odd lengths that year, but I would have voted for Skip Away. Silver Charm.
Yeah, but it's easier now looking back when you see that he did make it as a 3-year-old. He really did make it as a stallion. But he was a dominant 2-year-old, the most dominant since Secretariat. I don't think No, I think he deserved it that year. He just didn't go on and do what people wanted him to do later in his life.
And it's kind of sad that, we lost him in a barn fire in 2006. It was a very sad story. I mean, Favorite Trick was a fun horse to watch. I mean, I remember watching him up at Saratoga.
He was a great 2-year-old.
Yes, he was. Yep. And, Patrick Byrne, the trainer, also had that Princess Diana, the champion 2-year-old juvenile filly the same year.
Yeah, it was one hell of a year for Patrick Byrne. All right, guys, that is this week's edition of Right or Wrong. We'll do that all over again next week with some fresh new topics. We move on to one final topic before I get to your Super Bowl selections and your final point of the week. Later today, Naira is going to remember the late Jimmy Winkfield with the 38th running of the Jimmy Winkfield Stakes. In 2004, Winkfield became just the 3rd black jockey to be inducted into the Racing Hall of Fame, which now displays plaques of 5 black riders to receive our sport's highest honor. Which black jockeys, both past and present, have had the biggest impact on the sport of thoroughbred racing? Dale, you want to take it first?
Yeah, I'll take that one. This game was built on African-American jockeys and trainers, and we forget that. We're trying to do a better job at teaching and educating the people that this was their industry at one time. But Isaac Murphy has to stand out as the greatest African-American jockey of all time. Look him up and read about him and what he did in getting his freedom and how much he loved racing in the Kentucky Derby.
Timmy?
Yeah, I agree with that. You go back in the history books, 15 of the first 28 Kentucky Derbies were won by African-American riders. The first one, 13 of the 15 horses were ridden by African-Americans. There have been, since then, obviously, in the modern times, there's been fewer and far between a lot of that we don't have as many. But one that sticks out to me is Deshaun Parker. He doesn't win stakes races, but he's been such a consistent, dominant rider in the West Virginia circuit and in Louisiana. He's got over 6,000 wins. He was a George Wolfe Award winner. He's the winningest African-American jockey in history. And of course, I'm going to put Kendrick Carmouche in there. Besides being a solid rider in New York, he's in the Parks Hall of Fame. He's got 7 riding titles there. And the thing about him, he's such a good guy. And he makes a mean bowl of gumbo if he ever wants to cook it for you. He's a very good cook. Those 2 guys stick out. And peripherally, Marlon St. Julian rode in the Derby once. Kevin Krieger rode Golden Sense in 2013, was the first African-American to win the Santa Anita Derby. It's unfortunate we don't have more, but the ones that we have, they've made their mark.
Yeah, let me tell you one quick story about Malcolm Franklin, which came up from South Carolina with Frank Smith, the guy that broke all my horses like a father figure to me. And he's the same with Malcolm. So Malcolm and I are pretty close. And Malcolm came out and was a great bug boy in Maryland and So he comes to Churchill, and we're talking one day. I said, you feel much racism on the backside, like when you were up in Maryland? He said, well, there was a couple of guys I knew that didn't like black people. I said, how'd you handle it? He said, I went by every day and told them good morning and asked if I could help them in any way. And eventually they both rode me. I thought that was just a great statement.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Joining Jimmy Winkfield, by the way, Isaac Murphy, Willie Sims in the Hall of Fame, Shelby Barnes, and Anthony Hamilton, the 5 riders honored with plaques in the Hall of Fame, and rightfully so. All right, guys, it is time for your final point of the week, and then before I let you go, your Super Bowl prediction for tomorrow. So give me your final point of the week, and Tim, I'll kick it off with you.
Well, I hope that Frankie Dettori gets a Derby mount. With Newgrange getting sidelined, that was going to be his Derby horse. I mean, I know there's other opportunities he could use in Europe, but he would love to ride in the Derby and have a chance to win it. So I hope he gets a chance to do that. And just a salute to Burt Bacharach, who was a phenomenal songwriter, as we all know, but he was also into the horses. I mean, he owned some pretty good horses, including Soul the Matter, who gave Cigar all he wanted in the Dubai World Cup years back. So, R.I.P. to the songwriter and the horse owner.
Yeah, Timmy, you kind of stole my show. I mean, he loved the game. He had some great horses. Was huge in the entertainment industry, but also so good to the people of horse racing. Anybody that you talk to that was in horse racing that ever crossed paths with him could not talk better about a person.
Yeah.
That's some piece Burt Bacharach.
Yep. Yeah. Amen to that. All right, guys. Eagles or Chiefs? Who you got?
Didn't we make a bet on this last year and I never collected?
Yes, you did, Timmy.
You never paid yet either.
I won last year.
I don't remember that part.
Are we picking straight up or are we picking with the spread?
Oh, I don't know. I don't remember. Yeah, we got that argument, right? You did. I won, but you beat me with the spread, you said.
Let's go straight up. Eagles or Chiefs? Who gets the victory?
I'm going to Eagles simply because my good friend Terry Finley and Debbie Finley are from the Philadelphia area. They're going to the game, and I want to cheer for them, even though it's hard to go against a guy like Mahomes. I mean, that he's battle-tested and playing on that hurt ankle and not wanting to come out of the game, he impressed me.
Well, if Mahomes is healthy, and the reports are that he's a lot healthier than he was when they played Cincinnati, he's a dangerous man out there, I'll tell you. I mean, he's the guy you want to have running your offense in a big game. He was just named MVP the other night. I think that he's going to be facing a defense that he might not have seen much. He hasn't seen a defense as good as this one that he's going to be going up against, but he always just seemed to find a way. I mean, I remember last year when he beat the Bills with 13 seconds. So for my money, I'm not going to bet against Patrick Mahomes.
Lunch at Spring Street Deli, Saratoga, no spread.
Okay.
There you go. We got it on tape. Eagles for Dale,
Mike,
Chiefs for
pick?
Tim. Chiefs.
Okay.
Sticking with the AFC. Absolutely. All right, guys. We'll do it all over again next week. That's I Ask, They Answer. Good luck and enjoy the races.
All right, Mike, thanks.
Yeah, if you have a topic you want to hear Dale and Tim debate, email it to me, Mike@horseracingradio.net. I Ask, They Answer is presented by the University of Louisville Equine Industry Program and the College of Business. I'm back with more. This is the Equine Forum on the Horse Racing.
Tenda Equine and Pet Care Products have been keeping world-class equine athletes happy and healthy for generations. Keep your equine athlete looking and performing well with Tenda Next Generation Wound and Skin Care Treatment, along with nutritional supplements, leg and muscle care products, salves, hoof care, poultice, topical aids, and grooming products. Visit tendahorse.com today.
Hi, Tony. Hey, Matthew. There's a reason why Tony's Steaks and Seafood is my favorite restaurant. It's because I want to feel part of the family. Isn't that right, Tony?
That's right. There's a saying on the wall that I truly believe in. There's always room for one more at our table. We just want you to be part of our family.
And believe me, you will be. It's Tony's Steaks and Seafood right across from Triangle Park. Visit them at TonySteaksandSeafood.com.
I'm William Shatner, and I've been around a long time, but I'm truly humbled when I see the real battles our brave, paralyzed veterans have faced defending our freedom.
I was on a routine patrol, and we were in the desert of Kuwait, and the vehicle flipped and landed on top of me, which left me paralyzed from the waist down.
Okay, folks, this is heroism. That's why I'm proud to support Paralyzed Veterans of America. Go to PVA.org to learn how you can make a difference.
People do some pretty cool things in their 40s and 50s. Why should saving for retirement be any different? I mean, they go back to college, learn new instruments, start skateboarding. Whoa! Okay, maybe that one's not for everybody, but saving for retirement is. With aceyourretirement.org, you can get on track with your retirement savings no matter your age. Just have a 3-minute chat with Avo, the friendly digital retirement coach from AARP. You'll get personalized recommendations based on your input that are easy to understand and work with your lifestyle. It's quick, easy, and free. Plus, it's sponsored by AARP, so you know they got your back.
Woohoo! Gnarly move, Dad.
Thanks, sweetie. So wherever you are in your retirement savings journey, head to aceyourretirement.org and start chatting with Avo today. That's aceyourretirement.org. A message from AARP and the Ad Council.
Want to get the latest HRRN content directly on your computer or mobile device? Then subscribe to our podcast using the Podbean app or Apple Podcasts. Just go to hrrn.podbean.com on your computer and click follow, or download the Podbean app and search HRRN. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts and listen to our latest episodes anytime. Don't miss a thing. Subscribe to our podcasts today. You're listening to the Equine Forum on HRRN, presented by TwinSpires.
Well, there is certainly no better way to follow racing, breeding, industry news, and more than with Blood Horse. There are so many platforms in which they bring it to you, including bloodhorse.com, which is the thoroughbred industry's go-to site, Blood Horse Plus, the behind-the-scenes and exclusive videos, and a detailed stakes section, plus much, much more make Blood Horse Plus a really cool option. And then, of course, you have the Blood Horse Daily app. You have Blood Horse Magazine and their social media. No one covers thoroughbred racing, breeding, and our sport like Blood Horse. And for more than 100 years, you got it. It has been Blood Horse. Well, wow. Wrapping up a very fun show. Dale and Tim, a little buy and sell, a little right or wrong. Go back and listen to the podcast if you missed any portion of this show. My conversation with Matt Dinerman from Golden Gate, talking about the big race out there, the El Camino Real Derby. You heard from James Scully with the TwinSpires Triple Play, Kurt Becker with a Stroll Through Racing History, and yeah, Dale and Tim in that previous segment, plus so much more. Again, the podcast up for you in just a little bit at horseracingradio.net and Horse Racing Radio Network on Apple Podcasts and every major podcast platform. My thanks to all those guests. My thanks to each of you for listening and for participating in the poll question here this morning. My thanks to my producer, Lee Delapina, in our Lexington studios, and to Chauncey for handling all of our social media. I'm Mike Penna. Thanks for listening. Hey, go Chiefs and go Steelers.